Raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the Pacific Northwest, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm Chris Gio. I will be your conductor this evening as we take you beyond the veil. I'm joined, of course, by my lovely wife and co-pilot, Mrs. Gio.
Good evening, everyone.
And we've got some awesome listener questions to go over tonight. And we've had a lot of patient people in the chat room, so thank you very much for your patience. But we are getting on with the show, and like I said in the chat, if it doesn't work this go around, the next video that I will be uploading is me shooting the computer. But as I said, I already ordered another one. I'm just waiting for Amazon to freaking deliver it. They were out of stock until the 30th, so I'm going to be getting it sometime next week. But yeah, I just bought a whole new system. I said, screw it. I'm working with some pretty good stuff here. I'm working with a i7 4790K and a 980 Ti graphics card and a pretty heavy duty stuff. But as we talked about in the last broadcast, I bought Cherie a $3,000 computer a couple of years ago, and the damn thing is obsolete now. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Oh, I can't.
Like, she was trying to play some games.
I can't play Skyrim on it.
Yeah, and it's not VR ready. And I'm like, are you serious? $3,000 down the... So, I haven't upgraded my computer since before that, I think it was.
Right.
So it was time. And then I have something else that I'm planning to do with this computer too. So we'll see if we can get that working, but it'll be a little addition to tfrlive.com. 33 great shows. I think we're down to 32 shows now. So they can't call us Illuminati because we're down to 32 shows, but we may be bringing another couple of shows on. So we may go up to 34, 33, et cetera, et cetera.
We're in talks.
But got a badass team over there for sure.
Yes.
So Cherie has put together some awesome listener questions, and we do want to get into those as the broadcast progresses. And the energies have been just completely screwed up over the past couple of days. Now, we talked about how the energies fluctuate during the solstice and how this is a naturally low frequency. So we have to expect things, especially when we have like the Saturnian energy in this, and also Mercury in retrograde. Like, believe it or not, but astrology is real, and every time Mercury is in retrograde, everything just freaking boom, blows up. Anyways, we're going to push on because we have so many lovely people who hang out with us every Friday and Saturday, and we don't want to let you guys down. So that's why we're just pushing through. We're not going to drop the ball on you guys. We are here for you, and we're here for the duration. So everybody just send really good energy. And let's keep everything maintained until we can get another computer, and let's go from there. So next week we'll be on our A game, though, for sure. So,
yes,
Mrs. Gio.
Well, I want to say, first of all, that intro is just, everyone is exploding about how they love it. So,
well, thank you. I think I overestimated the ability of the computer when I was putting everything together. Mm-hmm. So what I did during the lapse is I just completely put everything low quality, which, you may not be able to tell, but it's definitely better than the lag that it had before. We also changed streaming servers too. So hopefully it was a problem with the streaming server. I'm looking at YouTube, and YouTube is like, stream is live 100%. It's a healthy stream. It's been eating nothing but organic. It hasn't been vaccinated, nothing like that. So we're getting thumbs up from YouTube. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back, and we will get into it right on the other side, right here on Beyond the Veil. Hi everyone, Chris Gio here from Beyond the Veil. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about the Beyond the Veil journey. It all started on November 5th, 2009, and has since evolved into what it is today. We travel through the truth movement, politics, ancient aliens, DMT, consciousness, you name it. And we've interviewed some really awesome people, like David Icke, Michael Tsarian, Rick Strassman, Joe Rogan, and many more. Well, we have come a very long way, and some shows seem a world apart from where we are today. Each show acted as a stepping stone to expanding our consciousness. You can get almost 10 years of downloads by visiting tfrlive.com/Beyond the Veil. You'll not only be supporting the show, but you'll also get access to tens of thousands of archives from dozens of other radio shows in the topics of conspiracy analysis, geopolitics, and spirituality. That's tfrlive.com/Beyond the Veil. Now, let's get on with the show.
My dear traveler, the purpose of raw consciousness is never to destroy. It is always to create. Build bridges. Create happiness. And bring forth new life. We must live in the hope that mankind will draw together. And that we better understand each other. The more that we awaken, the easier this will become. Now rise. Follow your conductors. And fear no danger. As you step beyond the veil.
833-TFR Live is the call-in number. I know Ramon said he wanted to call in, so we will be looking for that. Now, we can only keep the phone lines on for the next hour. What time is it now?
It is 9:30.
Oh, actually, only the next 30 minutes
30
because
minutes.
Brent Thomas will be taking the phone lines over at TFR, but we're still going to keep the show going for everybody here on YouTube and Facebook. So, Ramon, if you're going to call in now. And we just bought 833-BTV Live, too. So, I'm just waiting for them to activate that. And once that's activated, that will be the call-in 833-BTV Live. But for now, 833-TFR Live. I don't know what that translates to as far as numbers go. Now, speaking of numbers, that's what the Matrix is all made up of. Let's get into the database. Let's get into the mind wipe. Let's get into quantum computers and so many awesome questions that we have been sent by listeners. Now, let me say this before we jump into that. Brent said, isn't Mercury out of retrograde
Yeah,
now?
Mercury has been out of retrograde for about a week now.
Has it? Okay, well, this is just the residuals.
But yeah.
Brent said he's looking forward to Mercury being in regular grade.
Regular grade.
Retrograde. I don't know what regular grade is, but no, I completely agree with you, Brent. You know,
Well, and people around your age are going through generally something called Pluto square Pluto. And that's when the Pluto in the sky now squares where Pluto was when you were born. And so it's one of the first, ones that you run into in the middle of your life where it makes you question a lot of things and things go generally crazy for you around that time. So if you're feeling like that right now and you're wondering, okay, well, Mercury's out of retrograde, so why am I still feeling like this? You might want to look at your transit chart for the month. And there's several websites you can do that on. I need to get back into doing astrology.
You need to. She had so many people that wanted birth charts done and all of this, and then she got the shoulder surgery and boom.
Yeah.
That just kind of took it out because you can't do birth charts and type up. She does 100-page reports. It's freaking incredible. She did a 500-page report on me, and it's the most in-depth birth chart I think I want to speak for you, but that she's ever done.
Thank you.
And it's because she really wanted to understand how to subdue her husband.
No.
I think so. I think that's what it's about.
No, it was part of what you put in the intro, which is to better understand each other.
Aww.
And that's why I do everything that I do. I'm always trying to understand him better. I'm always trying to understand you guys better. And what it is that will help you in
Yes.
your day-to-day life.
So it seems like we are moving full steam ahead. I'm so happy about this. As you can see, the energy has changed. Now I'm on fire because things are working well. But again, Ramon, if you want to call in, you got to do it in the next few moments so we have plenty of time to speak to you. Otherwise, Brent Thomas will be taking over at tfrlive.com. So let's get into it, Mrs. Geo.
Yes. We were talking about the memory wipe that occurs every time we end an incarnation. There's this memory wipe that occurs before we're recycled back into this reality to live another incarnation. And someone said, his name is Sunseeker. He said, your mind at this egoic level could not function without the memory wipe. It instigates, quote, eternal life, unquote, for those who refuse to wake up. If you ever see where you can be trapped, you would be grateful for the memory wipe. Forever is long enough time to raise your frequency for release. It's not sinister. This is your choice to achieve expanded consciousness and soul identification.
That is a very good point, and I want to get to that because I do want to address that. I think he raises a really good point in a different perspective, which is that's what Beyond the Veil is all about.
Right.
But I do want to go to Ramon because
he's
I think he did call in, and I want to hear about his
excellent.
experience. My clock is not right here. So please let me know when we get close to the 57-minute mark so we can disconnect and get it over to Brent Thomas.
I can do that.
But I think we have Ramon on. Ramon, how are you doing?
Wake up. If you ever see where you
Hey.
trapped.
Hey, how are you doing?
What's going
hey,
on?
can
Should
we
I turn off my
Yes,
thing?
please do because we can hear it echoing through.
Yeah, sorry.
Awesome. Thank you for calling in. What's on your mind tonight?
Lots of things. I don't know. I don't even know what I was I don't even know what I was calling about in the first place, but you guys give me a free forum to be open with people that I don't regularly see, actually never see or never talk to on a regular basis.
You know, it's funny how that works. Some of my best friends and people I've known for 10 years, I've never met.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
It's so weird how it is in this modern day and age.
Right, yeah, like some of my best friends from back in the day, they don't agree with a lot of the things I say. In fact, my family doesn't agree with a lot of the things I say, and sometimes I disagree with the things that I say. You know, I'm a flat earther, and sometimes I go back. Sometimes I go back and forth.
Well, that's the hallmark, in my opinion, of a true truth seeker. The fact that you're questioning your reality over and over again, you're questioning your analysis. I've gone back and forth, up and down, left and right. And it's the people who are still stuck in the same thing they were doing 10, 15 years ago that I'm suspect about, because it's like, hey, all you're doing is just repeating stuff. You're not actually thinking for yourself.
Right, yeah. I think people have a problem with people, you know, I mean, obviously, you guys have talked about this, and many people have talked about this. It's really all about ego. A lot of people have a problem with saying that they were wrong. You know, like, oh my God, I was wrong. You know, like, oh my God, that's so horrible.
Right.
You know, like, and they right, and they can't, and they think that it's something against their own personal. You know what I have to say about ego is, look, bro, I was 1 year old. You were 1 year old. All of us were 1 year old. And you know what? We did not know how to speak at that point. And in other words, what that translates to is like, you should be learning. And what's the age that you you stop to learn? Is there an age that you know everything? No, there's not. I really don't think there is. You know, and that's my analysis on open-mindedness, I guess. Do you
find, Ramon, in your journey that some things that you knew as a child you unlearned and then relearned? So I'll give you an example. So when I was a kid, I always knew that you manifested your reality just by the things you'd say. And my father was so negative about literally everything. You can't do this, you can't do that, we can't do this, we can't do that, et cetera, et cetera. And it used to drive me crazy because I felt like he was manifesting it. And I was only like 4 or 5 years old when these thoughts were going through my mind. And then I unlearned all of that, and then I relearned all of that after the awakening.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, I don't want to, like, you know, demean my father or demean my parents, but, you know, I feel that I'm at the point, literally, that I don't want to say I'm smarter than all of my family, but I do feel like that I'm more, that I have definitely consumed more information than them. And I know they haven't. And then on top of it, I know that I'm more open-minded than them. And I know the biggest thing is, you know, it's about groupthink. You know, GROUP, groupthink. People are too worried about what the other person is going to think. Just like we were just talking about you know, whoever else there is that you hold high. And maybe they are a good friend, or they are a good father, or they are a good this, but maybe you know a little more than they do. And just because you hold them to a higher stature, you think that they may know more than you, but necessarily they don't. Maybe they don't. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. You know, and the open-mindedness is the lack thereof. There's a lack of open-mindedness. There's a lack of creativity. There's a lack of, oh, you're stupid. You know, I mean, it sucks because I saw my sister yesterday, and she was literally like my influence, you know, and she doesn't even know that I go back and forth on flat Earth, you know. She doesn't even know I'm a flat earther, and she barely even remembered that I was, you know, talking to her about Trump, whether I'm a Trumper or not anymore. And she didn't even remember, and she was talking about, you know, she was dissing Trumpers, and then she was really dissing, you know, flat earthers, saying they're fucking idiots and this and that. And I was just like, dummies, and this and that, and it actually was the first time I let that roll off my back, and I was just like, you know what, they don't get it, and that's the problem, is the ridicule. They ridicule each other too hard, and they're too. People don't know how to have a civil conversation and disagree, and then still come together and be like, that's how you agree eventually, is by being civil and not being emotional. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I completely agree with you. I mean, this is why we open up our forum like this, to have that kind of Socrates kind of intellectual back and forth. People don't have to agree with everything. That's the beauty of it, is we can come together. But with the flat earth stuff, like, as soon as I started talking about flat earth, I really saw who my friends were, because I've never seen people turn so quickly when I mentioned flat earth, and they're long gone now. Like, those people.
You know what's funny? Chris? Sorry, I don't want to stop you, but you know what's funny is, okay, so last Christmas, and obviously we all go through these things every year, right? Last Christmas, I was at my dad's house, and my little sister, she has a boyfriend, or a husband now, and last Christmas, I've been telling this for last 2 or 3 years about flat earth, and my little sister, she's so awesome. She's so supportive of me, and she, you know, holds me to a high account. But this year, her boyfriend finally came out. He said, no, you're stupid. You're this and that, you know. Flat earth is wrong.
Oh, wow.
And I finally saw, like, the reason I brought it up is because all the years before that, I was talking about Trump, I guess at least last year, I was talking about Trump. Whether I'm wrong or not about Trump doesn't really matter, but I was talking about Trump. And it was it was okay. It was, no, I'm sorry. My point is, it was negative. It was negative. And this year, I was like, no Trump, no politics. I thought I would bring something up. I don't know if the right word is benign, but something that's, mediocre, which I thought was flat Earth. And her husband got upset about that. And I was like, dude, like, why does this make people so upset? Why can't we just, to me, it's like, I do care if I'm wrong. Of course I care if I'm wrong. But I don't care enough to make me mad. And in other words, it's almost like watching a movie you've never seen. Like, the things I look up make me feel like, whoa, I've never heard that before. And I'm sorry, I love that.
Oh, you can say fuck on the broadcast. That. It doesn't bother us at all. So yeah.
Okay. Fine. All right. I'm just saying, like, I love that. Like, you ever heard the tree thing? Obviously, I know you guys have probably heard that, the tree thing about the tree of life and how there's like, I don't know, the veins of this and that, and the mountains are actually stumps of trees and people have cut them down or whatever. And
I saw that. There was a guy that put together a video. It was a really, really thought-provoking video. I don't know if I agree with it, but it's thought-provoking.
It's like the Saturn thing, you know what I'm saying? It's like when the Saturn thing came about, that was like 3 years ago when I saw it, and I was just like, whoa. And the thing in Saturn, that they talk about, the vortex or whatever.
It's like a hexagram.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. When and then the whole, cube thing and, the cube and all that stuff, when I first hear things that I've never heard before, this is fascinating to me. And I love exploring it. Whether it's not true or whatever, I love exploring it. And I think there's too much anger put into what people want to say is real or not real. And I think people need to let go of that and be like, dude, just relax and let's have a good time and talk about it,
Oh, I agree with you.
I don't know.
So let me ask you this. What got you interested in flat Earth? Because let me share my story real quick. A friend of mine who was a 32nd degree Freemason, Donnie Gilson, he came to me and he said, hey, I've been looking into this flat Earth theory. I said, oh, you're crazy. And I looked at Sharia and said, Donnie's losing his mind here.
He's lost it.
Yeah. And then I kept seeing it pop up in my timeline on Facebook over and over and over again. And finally I said, you know what? Screw it. I want to see what people are talking about. And I saw flat Earth clues.
Yeah, I think a lot of us think the same thing. A lot of us go, you know what I think? Yeah, sadly enough, I think a lot of us go through the same stages, but go ahead.
Yeah, I saw flat Earth clues and all that. And then it just kind of, and then it grew.
Flat Earth was later for me.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, I never thought in my entire time as a truther that I would be questioning the shape of the Earth. Like there had to be at least that had to be at least accurate right there. But no, it's not. And then that led me to simulation, and then it all started making sense from there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, totally. I mean, the first video I watched on flat Earth was the beginning of the title. He's like, basically what we're both saying and what you just said specifically, or almost specifically. He's all, I would hear this about flat Earth over and over again, and I thought, oh, these people are stupid, these people are dumb, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It's almost like the thing that I realized going through the process of, and for me, I don't know about everybody else, when I first actually started questioning things, unfortunately, even though I don't like the man, you guys may disagree, Michael Moore, Fahrenheit 9/11.
No, that was one of the first movies that I saw that got me questioning 9/11.
I think that was I think that was one of the first movies that made everybody think, Mm-hmm. When I saw that, what I told my friends, I was like, do you know what this means? And they're like, what? I was like, dude, no. Do you know what this means? This means that there's something, and a huge part of what we think is reality is not true. And unfortunately, whether you're this or that or whatever, that's the movie I think that really sparked a lot of interest into, or a lot of whatever it is. I don't know.
Into questioning the typical zeitgeist.
Questioning, yes.
Yeah, I saw that in the movie theater, and then I started listening to Coast to Coast, and then they did a round table with this guy who was just like so dynamic and just on fire, and his name was Alex Jones, and I started listening to his radio show and watching his films, and so these are all really good stepping stones. And I know a lot of people like to knock these kind of films, but they're good stepping stones.
Yeah, that was a huge stepping stone. And I don't know where I was going before the Alex Jones thing. Maybe you could help jog my my train of thought before that.
From truther to flat earther to raw consciousness. I think that's the progression here.
Well, see, the raw consciousness, I'm not there with you guys yet. If you want to go there, I'd like to take levels, but I would anyway. I don't want to go there yet.
Okay.
But
hey, it's each individual journey, and that's I really mean that when I say that.
I think the flat earther thing, I mean, just to be specific, I saw some video, just like I was explaining, and the guy literally explained, what we just said about how, which I did. I think you just said you did. You thought it was stupid. I thought it was stupid. And then I saw this video, and he said the same thing. He's like, I thought it was stupid too, but listen to this. And he starts talking about our government shooting nukes up into the the atmosphere, right?
And they called it Operation Fishbowl. They called it Operation Fishbowl on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah, and they give them these weird names, and you're just like, what does that mean? And then, and then there's all this emphasis on Antarctica. Now, I haven't looked into the actual details of, I'm a very big evidence guy. I can't just listen to people and say that's truth. I need to see it for myself. So I don't have the time, what I'm saying, to like look up every little thing. But what people have been saying is that I'm guessing, maybe you guys will know better, that we can't go to the Antarctic without some sort of guidance. Like a private citizen is not allowed to go to Antarctica. If I'm wrong, that's cool. I would love to be educated.
No, there was a Norwegian explorer who tried to go down there, and he got arrested like twice. And I don't remember his name, but people were saying, prove that you can't go down there. Okay, well, here's this guy who went outside of the boundaries, didn't have the proper licenses and all this, and boom, he got arrested. Like, it was like an Interpol case too. So it was freaking worldwide. Hey, anyways, we do have to wrap it up here in a moment because I have to hand it off to Brent Thomas, at least the call lines, because we're using the TFR call lines. Any last thoughts?
My last thoughts is I think you guys are great. You provide an open forum. You let me come on. I guess I love this channel. That's all I got to say.
Awesome.
And
we love
keep
you
your
too,
minds
brother.
open, man. Keep your minds open,
For sure.
Okay.
Hey, thank you so much for calling. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, totally.
All right. So, all right. So we're going to get our own call board. That's what I'm going to do. Now that I got 833BTV, I'm going to get my own call board now.
Yes.
So we can run it anytime during our special broadcasts and all of this. So let's get back to the question that you were asking.
Okay.
But you know what? We're about to hit a break here in just a moment anyways. So we'll get back to that here in 30 seconds. And I am so grateful that things are running smoothly now. It's only because of all the energy that you guys and gals are putting out.
Yes.
And so we will overtake the AI, but we have to use the AI. That's what I realized. We have to use the AI for our benefit.
Right.
And this whole system is a freaking AI system. And it's it's connected to the internet. It's probably connected to the damn hive mind of the AI. And who knows? But I don't want to be one of those that say, oh, the Illuminati's trying to shut us down. I remember hearing truther shows say that all the time. And I'm like, oh, it's like cringing. No, it's my shitty equipment here. And up it for next week. But anyways, everything's running smooth now. So we'll be right back. We've just gotten started right here on Beyond the Veil.
The universe is a manifestation of consciousness. Yet, the universe is real enough to the conscious beings in it, which are as unreal as the universe itself. Therefore, all things are possible. Beyond the veil.
All right, let's jump back into it. Joshua Tanner wrote an email on 1225. And Joshua, if you can resend that to info@beyondtheveilmedia.com, that way it pops up at the very top of the box. I will look for it during the next break and we will go over it because we've been receiving a ton of emails and awesome experiences from our listeners. So,
yes, definitely. Sunseeker said, your mind at this egoic level could not function without the memory wipe. It instigates eternal life, quote unquote, for those who refuse to wake up. If you ever see where you can be trapped, you would be grateful for the memory wipe. Forever is long enough time to raise your frequency for release. It's not sinister. This is your choice to achieve expanded consciousness and soul identification.
That's a very interesting point. And when you think about some of the traumas that we could experience in this matrix, especially through deaths, different ways of horrible deaths, it makes me think of an ayahuasca experience I had one time. You remember that when I was on the couch and I was having to see all of these executions, and maybe they were past lives, maybe I was seeing through somebody else's eyes. I think they were past lives because it went all the way back to Egypt, but it was one after another after another. And I was seeing through the eyes of the souls that were dead, that were dying. But one question that I had is like, how can nature be so cruel? This was before I had the understanding of the AI and all this. I mean, I knew about the AI, but I didn't have the full understanding like I do now. Well, I didn't have as much understanding because I don't want to say I had the full understanding, because if I say that, then I get stuck where I'm at now. I'm still looking for more understanding. So I thought to myself, how can nature be so cruel? And then I realized through that experience, what it was teaching me was two things. Number one, how to get outside of the river of consciousness that goes into the wheel and the recycling in the abyss. And it was showing me, look, you can float outside of it. You can float outside of it. You can navigate wherever you want to go. But ultimately, it was showing me as well that what happens at the point of trauma is that the soul jumps out of the body. I hate to use the word soul too, because I've been questioning what soul is lately, but that's, I'll just use it for common terminology. The soul jumps out of the body before the point of trauma. So it doesn't actually experience what the trauma that the body is experiencing. So I'm sure many of you have had these memories of third-person memories. Like I remember one very distinctly. I was coming up to an 18-wheeler. I was driving about 60, 70 miles an hour on the freeway. It was storming. I started hydroplaning right into an 18-wheeler. Right at that point, right before I got to it, I mean, I must have been a foot away from the wheel of this 18-wheeler. I managed to regain control of the car and move it back over into the lane. But I remember this memory from a third-person perspective. There was also another one that I remember, same freeway. I was driving down, and something just told me, change lanes, change lanes. There was no reason for me to change lanes whatsoever. It just told me, change lanes, change lanes. So I changed lanes, I was on the far right lane, got over more to the middle lane, and all of a sudden the car behind me, the car was in front of me, wound up being behind me after the incident, but the car in front of me just starts swerving over to the right lane and boom, crashes right into the side of the wall. I don't know if the guy was drunk. I don't know if he had a blowout. I don't know what happened, but something told me, Get out of that lane right now and get over one lane. And I remember that again from a third person perspective. Why do we remember it from a third person perspective? I think it's because the consciousness jumps out of the body before the point of a potential impact. So learning these lessons, I have to question what the listener wrote about the memory wipe being necessary for trauma, or to not remember the trauma. It's an interesting perspective, and it's one that I definitely do want to ponder. But I want the choice. Like, I don't remember making a choice to have a memory wipe. I mean, maybe at the point of memory wipe, they asked, "Do you want this do you want this
do you
wiped?"
yeah,
please wipe it.
Of the memory wipe
it.
Yeah.
But I just can't see myself saying yes to something like that, because in this particular life, and I think a lot of people out there agree with this, in this particular life, we have worked so hard. We have struggled so much in order to remember the little bits and pieces of the real world, the little bits and pieces of who we are, and everything that's been forgotten. Why would we agree to just completely wipe all that off? I mean, you have to weigh stuff out here, like trauma on one hand and truth and gnosis on the other. You only have a couple of scraps of truth and gnosis in any given lifetime, and you have a world of trauma. But in my opinion, those little scraps of truth and gnosis way outweigh the potential traumas that there were in a lifetime. And so if I have to hold on to all of my traumas from past lives in order to be able to assemble all of these scraps of truth and gnosis that I've been accumulating over past lives and over lives leading into this point, then so be it. Like, I don't know. Would anybody out there make the choice to have a memory wipe? So that's a question to ask for the individual, but I think the listener writes a very, very interesting point to really consider.
Definitely, but it's kind of like building up a bunch of money in your bank account or in your savings account, and you've got $1 million saved up, and then every time you die, you go back to zero. As far as your experiences and the level of growth that you were able to achieve in that life, it seems to me to be a little bit of a waste if you can't remember it.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yep. It would be like going through first grade and then unlearning everything and then expecting to go to second grade. Like, you have to know how to do addition and subtraction before you can learn multiplication and division. But if you have that part of you wiped, then how can you progress to the part where you learn multiplication and division? You have to have all of those understandings in order to know algebra. You have to know algebra in order to know trigonometry, and so on and so forth. And it's a progression like that, which is why I still feel that the memory wipe is sinister.
Definitely. Captain said, "What do you guys think of tarot? Self-energy, other energy, AI?"
She is the astrologer and the tarot reader, so she's awesome with the tarot. Like, I don't do anything without consulting the oracle, and I'm serious. Like, I really live by this. I everything I do, I ask Cherie, can you do a reading for this? What do you think about this? Etc. So,
well, somebody else, YG Slayer Songs, also said, "I think the goal of the AI is to get us stuck in karmic loops, and NPCs follow these programs and energies like astrology. The karmic loops suck our life force life after life." I don't think NPCs are interested in astrology. I think they're interested in astronomy, and they make fun of astrology for the most part. And tarot to me has always been about reading the energy of this matrix. There's an energy to it, and there's a flowingness that you have to read, and it's almost like you get in this certain place where you can just kind of reach and grab little bits of information. And that's what I do whenever I do a tarot reading for somebody. And
Erica would like to know if she can get a reading from you.
Yes. Just email me at shreegeo@tfrlive.com, and I will be sure to get back to all of you. That will take it directly to me. because I do want to get back into astrology now that my shoulder's working and I can type and use my mouse properly.
It's been so nice.
It's been
over the last couple
wonderful.
days.
Yeah. It's been I know a tough couple months for us both. So I'm glad to be back in business.
When the twin's not happy,
ain't nobody happy.
Nobody's happy.
I know. Joshua Tanner said, when Cherie's talking about the sacrifice of Neo in the Matrix being connected to Christ consciousness, maybe the sacrifice is the human body that we are taking care of in this lifetime. What do you think? I'm going to hand it to you.
Again, the idea of sacrifice, I think it's an AI construct. I don't think that we need to sacrifice anything because we are already what we think we aspire to be. The AI tricks us into believing that we're not. That's the whole thing about the Christ consciousness. That's the whole thing about ascension and all of this. It's a trick to make you think that you're not already what is put out on the plate in front of you as this, nice, beautiful dessert or whatever. So the idea of sacrifice too, think about this. I was just having a conversation about this very thing in a different context, but about this very thing with a friend of mine earlier today. And he was working and he's like, yeah, I'm the only one dumb enough to actually show up to the office here. Everybody else is on vacation and blah, 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 blah. And I started talking to him about balance and about balancing your time and balancing this and that, et cetera, et cetera. So he said, you know what? That's absolutely right. We revere these people that sacrifice themselves for their work. And, look how great he is. He works 16, 17 hours a day. Look at how he's climbing the corporate ladder, et cetera, et cetera. Well, all the while, the sacrifice is sacrificing the time with the family, sacrificing the time for the self, et cetera, et cetera. And when you do that, you're completely and totally off balance. So we can look at sacrifices like that from one perspective and think, okay, well, sacrificing that as actually, it feels like some kind of altruistic kind of act, but in actual fact, it's working against yourself and working against your entire consciousness and the people around you. And it's a detriment. So can we look at a different type of sacrifice, like a Christ consciousness type of sacrifice in the same regard, in the same perspective? Now, going back to the time when I was trying to be vegan, I was miserable the entire time, but I thought that was a sacrifice that I was making in order to better myself and to achieve a higher state of consciousness, et cetera, et cetera. But I found myself to be frustrated because my body was screaming out for one thing, and I was doing something completely different, and then I wasn't able to maintain it. And once I wasn't able to maintain it, that's when I really started beating myself up over it. But now that I've realized, wait a minute, I am everything that I've been trying to be. I don't have to walk a particular way or do anything like that because I already am the raw consciousness. I already am everything. Then the need for sacrifice is no longer there. And then what I found is happening is that as things are starting to rebalance, rather than looking at things as a sacrifice, you detach parts of yourself, parts of your consciousness out of a pure desire to do so, rather than feeling like it's an obligation as a sacrifice to walk a particular path. So that's a small example of this much greater concept that we're talking about, but as above, so below. So we can take the below ideas, apply them to the above ideas, and see if they hold the same amount of water. The number one message that I want to get out there to people is you're perfect exactly the way you are. You are wonderful. Stop beating yourself up because people have all these different paths and different ideas of what ascension is and what Christ consciousness is and all this, and just be happy. That's the path to ascension. Happiness. You've got to be happy. If you don't start from that foundation, your entire journey is completely detrimental to your consciousness.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And if you aren't already thinking that you are what you have been looking for already, or what you've been striving to be already, then that makes you vulnerable. And vulnerability is what makes up most of what the ego is. When it boils down to it, the ego is just an overcoat that you wear that is built by the feeling of vulnerability. Even if you're fine and perfect just the way you are, you still feel vulnerable. You still feel like everyone's out to get you, everyone's going to attack you, and that you have to protect yourself. And by putting up these walls, you're essentially cutting yourself off from the energies that would help you along your path and teach you these lessons and give you the ability to tap into the raw consciousness.
You know what? Dakota Kemp said a 7-day water fast that will give you some antennas. And I completely agree. There is something about fasting. If I remember correctly, after 3 days, your cells completely rejuvenate themselves, like are completely just reborn. So there is power in that. And I fast whenever I can, whenever I feel the need to. I stop seeing it as an obligation. And when I stop seeing it as an obligation, the fasts actually are way, way, way easier. And it's something that you yearn for, as opposed to feel like, oh, well, you know, I need to fast because of this, or I need to fast because of that. I'm about to drink ayahuasca. I need to fast. When it's I need, then it becomes different than I want to. So it's changing the need to a want, even though your body actually needs it. Like my body is like, you know, sometimes it's like, all right, too much meat, take a break for a while and reset. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But it's, I want vegetables. It's not, I need vegetables. It's become, I want vegetables.
Yeah, I know. I've gotten to where I actually prefer vegetables over meat or over even like fish or chicken or anything like that. Because I had an ayahuasca experience one time where the vegetables that we had out, because we had out some onions that we were going to make into our post ayahuasca meal later on that evening. And they started to talk to me, and I apologized for us being ready to eat them.
Aww.
And they said, oh, nah, don't apologize. We enjoy it when you eat us, because then we integrate with the cells in your body and we become something new, and we get to transform and become something different. And that kind of stayed with me, because you don't see that when you kill an animal and eat an animal. Even if it's raised humanely and killed humanely, et cetera, you don't see that. You wouldn't see that same kind of acceptance and integration. It does feel like a parasitic or a one-sided kind of interaction to me.
Well, you know, I know we went through this in the first segment, but it's not on this particular archive. So let's go ahead and go over it one more time, because it kind of segues right into it. And I thought it was really an interesting tidbit of information about the eggs.
Yes, I think it's right here. And it was from K. Rose on meat eating versus non-meat eating. It seems like the world we are living in is designed to be parasitic, meaning in order to sustain yourself, you have to feed on another life form. It has been found that an egg screams as it is being fried. Read The Secret Life of Plants. In the end, even vegetarians are feeding on other life forms. Maybe it feels more acceptable because the life form doesn't bleed like us. And like I said, I think that vegetables are different in that they don't mind being eaten. They don't mind being integrated with something else. They're there for that purpose. That's how they make more of themselves. That's how they reproduce, is they integrate with animals, and they allow animals to carry their pollen everywhere and to eat them and spread their seeds around. With the meat, it's a little bit different. It's a lot different, actually. That does seem like a parasitic thing to me. But that's an interesting idea, that plants actually do know when you're about to touch them, or when you have an ill thought about touching them or hurting them. And I'm wondering if it's because they're afraid, they only don't like it when you are going to hurt them for no other reason but to hurt them. Like there was a kid one time that I watched, and he would just like pull the leaves off of a tree that was, in the foyer somewhere, just for no other reason but to pull them off. And I thought, how wasteful, how mean to that tree. Why are you just grabbing the leaves and poking them and tearing them and everything? I bet, they feel that and they're like, whoa, what are you doing? That's not even, there's no point to that. But if you're eating them and integrating with them, then it's different, I think.
Yeah, Timberwolf said, so that's why TFR is partial to reports from The Onion.
Cute.
No, I was listening to one of the shows one day, and I heard the freaking mainstream media news come on. And I'm like, oh my God, I think I was listening to like Frank Castle or Raw, or it was a show like that. And the mainstream news came on and just killed the frequency. And I was like, something's got to be done about this. We got to put something else there. So I figured, you know what? It's all fake news anyways. Might as well get the fake as the fake news and have a laugh about it. And some people had a laugh, but some of the hosts were like, no, we want the mainstream propaganda. And I'm like, why do you want the mainstream propaganda? I thought you were anti-mainstream. No, we want the mainstream propaganda. So, they outvoted me, and we got the mainstream propaganda playing on TFR now. But, it is what it is.
Right. And, it's not... I don't know which one's worse, the mainstream propaganda or the fake news funny stuff. I like the funny stuff. I'd rather listen to that than any mainstream stuff. But
yes. Oh, Timberwolf is Chris Steiner. Chris Steiner, what's up, brother? So yeah, long time TFR listener. So he knows.
Yep.
He knows, yeah. And then some of the people in the TFR chat too. They were like, "Oh my God, it's onion stuff." It's like, oh, come on, grow up, okay? Take a freaking joke. Just laugh, okay? Laugh. It's okay to laugh. I promise you, it's okay.
Here's a pretty controversial question or comment.
It's all controversial questions and comments.
Jesus Ramirez said, "There is nothing outside the Matrix. Zion was hell in the Matrix. It's a loop. Like, what do you expect? The Creator would let you out and wreak havoc on his creation? He's a billion times smarter than you. Evolved way above that your little brain can barely comprehend."
I don't comprehend it with my brain. I comprehend it with my raw consciousness.
Right.
Oh.
Like you usually cannot jump between sim worlds because the code is incompatible. It won't work. You can't use your avatar from WoW in Sims 2. The code just won't work. If the demiurge is real, who do you think put it there? The Creator. The only way to gain some more freedom is to be meek, humble, loving, spiritual, lessen ego. Remember, the meek shall inherit the world. If you do what the Creator wants, and the Creator sees your worth, he activates codes in your DNA where you're able to see more and experience more. Sort of like powers.
Everybody's entitled to their perspective.
Superpowers.
I don't expect anything more from a guy named Jesus. But then again, my name is Chris, and I was named after Christ. Like, my mom was pregnant, and Christ came to her and said, "Don't do any of the epidurals or anything like that, and have a natural birth." And so she named me Chris after Christ. Yeah, so I can't speak. I'm not one to speak, but what Jesus was saying though is like, why do we feel like we have to be so meek? Why do we feel like we have to worship something? Why do we feel like we have to be under something? It's an old way of thinking, and it's not one that has done anything positive for us. So when we get this idea of a creator out of the picture, then all of a sudden we start to see the power for ourselves. And if there is a creator out there, I imagine that a creator would want to see its creations grow up and take responsibility for themselves and become creators of their own. Just like if you had a child, you want that child to grow up and be a man or a woman and have their own life and become parents, and you revel in your grandchildren when they have kids of their own and they become parents just like you. So why would a creating force be different? Why does a creating force want to keep us in a perpetual state of servitude, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And to the idea that the listener proposed about the creator deeming you worthy to do something to your DNA to activate something like this. Well, why aren't you your own judge? Why aren't you the one to take that kind of power over yourself? Your higher self, your raw consciousness, it knows what you are ready for. I mean, that's the whole ayahuasca experience right there. Ayahuasca doesn't show you anything until you're ready to see it. And it's not the ayahuasca, it's yourself. Yourself doesn't unlock those levels of understanding until you're ready to see them. But you have to break off all of the BS, and you have to ultimately be ready to step beyond the veil. Don't go anywhere. Hour number 2 is coming up here in just a few moments.
Phase 1 is being completed. Phase 2 will be initiated momentarily. Please remain seated while we prepare to go deeper. You can visit us at www.beyondtheveilradio.com. Fellow traveler, the Matrix is a prison. Its bars are comprised of the unknown. We must pass through illuminated and inspired by the darkness, which becomes lighted by our presence as we step beyond the veil.
I shouldn't play these kind of songs. It makes me think that I should be somewhere in another state of consciousness that is not a higher level of consciousness, but rather a carnal level of consciousness.
Yes.
That MDMA kind of. Anyways, let's switch switch the frequency here. Let's go up to the stars. We have Astro Watch with Mrs. Geo.
Yes. 2018 begins with a noticeable lack of the air element. Aside from the moon's quick visit to Libra from January 7th to 10th, only Juno is placed in an air sign, Aquarius. When an element is missing or lacking, we tend to go to extremes to try to redress the balance. The element of air is associated with the mental plane. It's intellectual and conversational. We could either be too detached and unemotional during this period, or at the other end of the scale, unable to think things through rationally. This could be a period when it feels like everyone is talking but nothing is happening, or no one is communicating and everyone feels misunderstood. Certainly at the beginning of the year, the full moon in Cancer on January 2nd suggests emotions are heightened. The moon's in a flowing grand trine pattern with Jupiter, Mars, and Neptune, which makes acting on our feelings easy. We must watch, however, the wide lunar opposition to Pluto, which could appear threatening to the security-conscious Cancer moon. On this date, too, Mars is square the nodes, so what we do now carries weight on a spiritual level. How we handle our anger, how we defend and protect ourselves, all these issues are animated by this tense connection. We also have the element of surprise thrown into the mix as Uranus stations direct on January 2nd. Of course, with the sweet grand trine in the full moon chart, some surprises may be welcome. Still, things can get crazy quickly with Uranus. It may, however, be high time we start to make changes that we've been considering while Uranus was in retrograde. As Uranus stations direct, there's an urge toward new horizons, freedom of expression, and revolution, especially as Uranus is now marching through the last few degrees of Aries. Look into the house in your chart with Aries on the cusp, as well as the house where Uranus is transiting now. They may be the same or different. This represents the part of life that has needed a shakeup and or an upgrade. Courage, Aries, is required to make it happen. Uranus in Aries is all about daring to be different, and the station direct is a green light to go ahead. Mars forms a conjunction to Jupiter on January 7th and a sextile to Pluto on January 8th. These aspects trigger the sextile between Jupiter and Pluto, which will perfect on January 16th. This is the first in a series of 3 sextiles that promise benefits from deep transformative work. We're also looking at how we can increase, and that's Jupiter, our power, and that's Pluto. Mars conjunct Jupiter aligns deep faith with action. We want to do something that makes our world a better place. While the mighty games of the powers that be play out behind closed doors of governments, we all get a boost that reminds us that we too have the power to change things. Pick a belief, a religion, a cause, a country, a charity, or your raw consciousness, and find out what you can do to help the world around you. In our own personal lives, future developments benefit from a leap of faith to eradicate what no longer works for us. Also on January 16th, Ceres will make the second of 3 conjunctions to the North Node. Ceres is a mother goddess associated with food, crops, feast, famine, loss, and nurturing. Collectively, this means Mother Earth is taking center stage in our evolutionary progress. What we do now, as far as the planet is concerned, has ongoing consequences and karma. We are also reaping the rewards of past karma, too. Individually, this is about tapping into our inner mother and nurturing our own innate creativity.
Well said. Thank you very much for that report, Mrs. Geo, and we'll be right back as we travel even deeper beyond the veil. Many people ask, Chris, how can I support Beyond the Veil? Well, first and foremost, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The more engagements a video gets, the more likely it is for YouTube's AI to recommend it to others with similar interests. Same goes with Facebook too. You can also find us on iHeartRadio.com. Just search for Beyond the Veil. We have a dedicated streaming channel where we play the best of BTV 24 hours a day. You can also send us questions, comments, and guest suggestions to info@beyondtheveilmedia.com. Finally, the most support you can give is by sending positive and loving energy to all of us here at Beyond the Veil and all of the Beyond the Veil viewers. Together, we are building a field of energy to rival the artificial intelligence control of this matrix. Take a moment to meditate on yourself, others around you, and tap into this amazing energy field. Now, let's get back to the show.
Fellow travelers, always remember to walk uprightly and circumscribe your desires as we travel upon the level of time to that undiscovered state of consciousness, traveling to the place where once obtained, no traveler returns. The place of raw consciousness which awaits us when we are past beyond the veil.
PSYOP Factory asked, or posed a question. It's not really a question, it's just a question to ponder. What if you didn't even exist before today, and when you woke up this morning, all of your memories and knowledge were implanted in your head just before you opened your eyes? That is definitely a question to ponder. So, what do you think, Mrs. Geo? Would you be able to tell if all of your memories were implanted? I don't think you could. Not if it was seamlessly implanted in a way to make it, the illusion, that much more real.
Wasn't the 13th floor or...
No, Dark City.
Dark City. It was about that.
Yeah.
And the people would go to sleep at night and then they would wake up and be completely different people, playing completely different roles. I think that's a little far-fetched. And the reason why I say that is because your memories are like a cornerstone to who you are, and they make up who you are. And false memories, I don't know if false memories carry the same weight and would give somebody enough of a reality to base their entire personality and who they are on. Does that make sense?
It does.
Like incomplete information would result in somebody that would essentially just not have a personality at all.
Well, then you have to also ask about or ponder the question about consciousness transfer technology.
Mm-hmm.
Is that possible? And if so, cloning and so on and so forth. And if so, what does that clone experience? Like, does it feel that it's real? Does it know that it's a clone, et cetera, et cetera? And if you transferred your consciousness to a machine, for example, could you then re-download it and operate in a different body? So these are things that people have pondered. I was just watching an old Twilight Zone. It was either or Tales from the Dark Side, one or the other, and it was called The Tomb of Osiris. Do you remember that? The Tomb of Osiris, or it was called The Pharaoh's Curse. The Pharaoh's Curse. That's it.
There you go.
Essentially, it's this magic trick that's passed down from one magician to another to a younger apprentice. And you get through the episode, and there's this one young magician, and he's real eager to learn this trick, and he's watching all these films, trying to figure out how the trick is done, and watching how it was passed from one magician to another. And then at the end of it, you find out that the trick is that the oldest magician actually switches bodies with the younger magician. So now the younger magician's consciousness is in the old decrepit body, and the older magician is in the young body. So people have obviously been fascinated with this concept for a long time, even before the possibility of transferring consciousness to a computer. But could you actually do that? I don't think it could be done, because what makes up our consciousness exists outside of the matrix. So because of that, I don't know if it could be transferred like that. What do you think?
I don't know, but someone said, oh, what if all the NPCs woke up and did a Blade Runner replicant rebellion thing? I think they already have. I think some of the major times throughout history when you've had a large number of people just go completely ape shit and just completely destroy things and burn down their own everything. And that's not what we saw in Greece, by the way. We're talking about like huge riots and things like that. I think it's throughout the course of history, the AI has had to get rid of NPCs on a mass scale, and sometimes it causes like a self-destruct mode to start playing itself out, and so it can free up extra memory for itself for its own use. And that could
I
be
agree.
one of the things.
I remember back in like 2014, the first realization of NPCs, 2013, in an ayahuasca experience. And it was like, hey, look, there's some of the people around don't have anything in them. And then I was actually able to see a light in some and not see a light in others.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and forth on so many different possibilities. Like there was an extinction level event, and we've been moved, and some people have souls, and some souls have been ejected. And the organic computers are just kind of playing out their program, just, walking around with nothing inside of them. But then you bring artificial intelligence and computer simulation into it, then to me, it makes much more sense than some kind of soul extraction process. But it's funny how this idea has been on the table for so long and spoken about in so many different perspectives. I think we talked to a few guests about it too, who brought this idea to the table that there's people that just don't have anything inside of them. And there has been definitely an agenda to dim the light and extinguish the light in many others that do have a light inside of them through pharmaceuticals and things like that. But then as I get further into the idea, I think, well, organic consciousness is smarter than that. We don't fall for all these vaccines and GMO foods and, this whole agenda for depopulation. So then back to what you were saying, depopulation agenda, could it be, like you said, to minimize system resources, the use of system resources by getting rid of some of these non-character players? And then the non-character players, I think they really think that this is real. I think because it is real to them. They don't exist outside of the matrix. So because of that, this is a real construct to them. And they will fight tooth and nail to preserve the integrity of this construct and the illusion. What's an illusion to us is real to them. So we have a very interesting dynamic here. We talk about timelines merging on top of each other. I was just speaking to somebody about Mandela effect earlier, and I brought up the idea that the people who came from the timeline of Berenstain Bears, for example, they legitimately remember Berenstain Bears, where all of us, we remember, well, most of us, I don't want to speak for everybody, but most of us, that most of the people I talk to, they remember Berenstain Bears. But I wonder also if it could be an NPC versus organic consciousness type thing. Like organic consciousness remembers the anomalies and the changes, whereas NPCs, because they're running a program connected to the hive mind, they may have been in a timeline that was Berenstain, but their programming being connected to the hive mind was able to be changed to Berenstain. So when they think back to those memories, which are ultimately implanted by the hive mind, they legitimately remember Berenstain. But I know one thing for sure is that the people that say they remember Berenstain, they legitimately remember Berenstain. The people that remember Berenstain legitimately remember that. And this applies to every Mandela effect out there. So it's pretty interesting. And I always felt right when I heard about the Mandela effect that it's very important. It's critical. I didn't understand why, but it was critical to hold on to the true memories of the way things used to be, to hold on to the Berenstain instead of the Berenstain, and all these other different things. I didn't know why. I just felt that it was really, really important. Now I understand why, because when we hold on to those true memories, we're reaching further into our organic consciousness, and we're digging through the AI implemented programs, which are the changes, which you have these timeline changes, then it changes the consciousness as a result. Like it just kind of spreads like that. And then you start thinking in a completely different way, but it's important to hold on to that. So I didn't realize the importance of the Mandela effect other than, it's a pretty cool phenomenon. And somebody's probably has a time machine, is messing with a timeline. But I think on an even deeper level, it's way, way, way more important to hold on to these memories. What do you think?
Definitely. It is important to hold on to memories. Tanner said, what if we were all NPCs that woke up?
That's an interesting thought. And I've thought that before too. Like, am I an antivirus in this matrix? Like there's a virus in the matrix. So did the system create a series of antiviruses and I happen to be one of them?
Right. And I've thought about that too. But I think that for the majority of people that are listening to us, I think it's the case where it's the same reason why the NPCs, or the same reason why people on this planet Earth want to fix planet Earth, because it's the only planet we have, and you can't get oxygen literally anywhere else in the solar system that we know of publicly, anyway. And so we want to fix this planet because it's the only place that there is for us to exist right now.
And doesn't that sound like a big crock of shit? You have this universe, right? That's
huge.
Like I can't even make a metaphor here, a representation. Like the universe is this big, and you are a fraction of 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 a dot. Not you, but this planet Earth is a fraction of a dot compared to this huge, vast space. And this is the only place that we can exist. This is the only place that has oxygen, at least that we can reach. That sounds like a bunch of bullshit. Like something you would tell somebody that you don't want out of their cage. Mm-hmm. Simple as that. Right.
And we want to either get out of here or reset it to where it's a tolerable and where it's tolerable and where it's what it was originally meant for. But we definitely don't want to stay and just try to fix it. There's no fixing this kind of thing if you're really organic consciousness and you really want out of here.
Well, Sarabella raised a good point. She said, with all due respect, but there are parallel dimensions in D-Wave quantum computers. Georgie Rose in his 19-minute TED Talk explains that. No doubt at all. The analysis and hypothesis that we're posing is that we're actually inside one of those D-Wave computers. Now, the D-Wave that we see is like very baby technology compared to what we're actually inside of. but we're inside of something very similar to that. We're inside of the Sophia system, which is a D-wave quantum computer creating this matrix, and parallel timelines. They exist because it's parallel matrix simulations being run on top of one another. And the system is having to exert more system resources to try to keep the people that are waking up asleep. So it's merging timelines on top of one another, just like you would on your computer. You would stop one program and stop another in order to try to make another program work better if you're exhausting your system resources. So the timelines are merging on top of one another like that. So no, I completely agree with you. I would just take it a step further and say that we're inside of it. And it's not just a thought and something to ponder, but rather this is based on some freaking scientific data here. I hate to sound redundant, but Professor Gates, he discovered a self-correcting computer code in string theory and within the fabric of space-time. Now, this wasn't just any computer code. This was a computer code written by a guy named Claude Shannon in the 1940s. For me personally, that sealed the deal for me. It complemented and underlined all the ayahuasca experiences and gnosis that I had leading up to that. But when I saw this, when I saw a computer code written by the 1940s in the fabric of space-time, I said, there is no other possibility here except for we are in a matrix based on this guy Claude Shannon's computer code. Think about it. See how you think about it. See how it resonates with you. But I'm in complete agreement with you.
Joanna said some NPCs could be programmed to agree with us to some point. Programmed to agree with us to some point. I agree, and I would go so far as to say that some NPCs are something that we created as kind of a backdoor to help us. Like the DMT elves that you see whenever you smoke DMT, those could actually be good guys that we installed so that they would kind of point us in the right direction as far as consciousness goes. Like a training program.
Well, I feel that we, as the creators, at some point, I think we knew that we had to inject ourselves into this matrix in order to change the matrix, because it couldn't be changed from the outside. But at the same time that we were hacking the matrix, we injected certain activation points and programs within ayahuasca, psilocybin, psychedelics, things like that, and in other places too, not just that, but these are, the ones that I'm tapped into. And as a matter of fact, Ramon, who called the show earlier, he just ate some mushrooms. So
very nice.
Rock on, man. Have a pleasant journey. Let us know how it goes. But, I just lost my train of thought because I do this. I go in a different, but we hack the matrix and we left ourselves activation codes and certain things like that, within this construct. So it very well could be the case that we also programmed or reprogrammed or hijacked some of the computer resources, which would include NPCs, to act as guides or just push us in the right direction. But we have to remember, at the end of the day, guides, especially spirit guides, even if they are programs that we programmed within the time stream to be able to activate those, it still comes from us. So it's either a part of our consciousness or it's something we programmed into the matrix in order to help us wake up. But any way it goes, it comes back to us. We can't give our power away to anything outside of ourselves. We have to take the power. That's the only way out of the matrix, is to take the power for ourselves and go within, and we will be able to find our way out of the matrix. But it's so important to not give that power away.
Tanner has the $1 million question. Yeah, I was going to say, how does DMT exist on this matrix if it's a sinister one?
How can DMT exist?
How does DMT exist on this matrix if it's a sinister matrix? I think is what he's saying.
I think there has to be some level of realness to the simulation. So it's a sinister matrix, but it's not all sinister. So the devil he's not going to appear to you, and I'm speaking the metaphor here, he's not going to appear to you with a pitchfork and horns. He's going to appear to you with the suit and things like that. You've got to have that presence of good. You've got to have that thing that draws you in order to really bring in a good deception. The best lie is 80% truth. So I think it's not very likely that everything in the Matrix is sinister, especially when we see it for what it is. And the idea of a little bit of realness, I think that the AI, in order to create this Matrix, had to borrow from what's really in the real world. Perhaps DMT exists within the real world, or perhaps DMT, psilocybin, things like that, may have had somewhat of a sinister intent, because going back into some of my older ayahuasca experiences, I was completely thrown off the path because I didn't have a target. I didn't have a reference point for where I was going. So I was just going with the vine and going with the DMT experiences. And had I stayed on that journey, had I stayed on that path, I would be completely in a different place than I am now. And I'd be completely diverted into an AI egoic kind of pursuit of higher consciousness, which I broke free from. But then the understanding of knowing what the DMT molecule is and what the psychedelics are, now I feel that I can utilize them to the full potential, and the potential that is most complementary and beneficial to raw consciousness, as opposed to falling into an AI trap. See, nobody's ever talked about this, about the possibility of falling into AI traps with psychedelics. They just say, oh, psychedelics is just the end all be all of awakening. And I fell for it too. I thought that too. I've never heard Dennis talk about this, Dennis McKenna. I've never heard Terrence McKenna talk about this, Tim Leary, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe they just simply didn't know. And it's something that we've uncovered and we've been able to break out of. But you take psychedelics, you take DMT, and you see Jesus, what happens? You could very well start going into that AI constructed religion and start living in that particular type of lifestyle. I know one guy, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he's a very famous guy. We've had him on the show a few times. He took ayahuasca and then turned into a Muslim afterwards. And I was like, hold on. Muslims and ayahuasca? And I'm like, can you still do that as a Muslim? And he goes, no, we see our body as a temple, and so we don't put anything into our body, et cetera, et cetera. But he said he was the revelations on the ayahuasca that led him to Islam. And I'm like, dude, you are freaking completely out of your mind. But that's what I mean. Like you have these spiritual experiences, and you don't have a again, proper or right, I don't want to use those words. You don't have a 360-degree perspective. There you go. You don't have a 360-degree perspective of the experience, so you can be led down these AI paths, including New Age paths, which I fell victim to too. Everything that I say, I speak from experience. It's not like, when I speculate on something or theorize on something, I say I'm speculating or theorizing. I'm speaking from experience here. Like, I went down some pretty fucked up paths thinking that I was being the new age, higher consciousness, et cetera, et cetera. And it's completely away from the raw consciousness that is inside. I was looking outwards for everything. I was looking outwards to try to talk to deities and gods and goddesses and spirit guides and DMT elves and DMT teachers and all this stuff. But I broke those chains. And once I did, holy shit, like it's a completely different world. But yes, I wholeheartedly agree with you. It's part of the Matrix, but it can be used for your benefit.
Ian thinks that we're talking shit. He said to spend some time in nature, it is the good guy.
But it's part of the Matrix. See, at the end of the day, it's part of the Matrix. I completely agree with you. I go outside, we go fishing, we spend time in nature. No, it's
beautiful.
It's very therapeutic for sure. But at the end of the day, I know that I exist outside of the Matrix. So the Matrix itself is a program. There's some lines of thought that we can maintain the integrity of the program by removing the virus and then sustaining a nice little beautiful balanced program. And if you want to live in a program, that's perfectly fine. Like maybe this world is better than the real world. That's a possibility. You know, I think the real world is riddled with war right now, and it's not a fun place to be. But we can't change the real world as long as we're in here. But in order to get more people out there to help change the real world, we had to come in here. So you got to go in to go out. You got to go in to provoke change on the out. As above, so below. I mean, these hermetic principles just echo so much. But it's part of the program, though. That's the thing. It's part of the program.
Well, and the fact that the way the moon acts has such an impact upon our pretty much our emotions, what makes us us, our personalities. The moon, where the moon was when you were born, has so much to do with your emotional makeup. It's incredible. Even the word lunacy or lunatic comes from Luna, the moon. So I think that because of that, you have to consider it a manipulative force. Everything in nature. We'll be right back.
That's true.
Final hour here on Beyond the Veil.
There's so many ands, ifs, buts. My mind reeled with this too. It did. We'll be right back.
Everything that is, was, and will be, eternally is, even the countless forms which are finite and perishable only in their objective, and not in their ideal form, the form which manifests itself, beyond the veil.
All right, so many wonderful people in the chat room tonight. Seasider, of course, Lolita Cox, Johanna, Unplug the Matrix, Teresa, Johanna, Cherie's looking at me. Joanna. Cherie's looking at me like, oh, are you really going to make me do the Facebook one?
Yeah.
Chris Steiner, many, many, many more. And so we won't do that. We like to say hi to everybody.
Well, I like saying hi to everybody.
Yeah. No, like Tanner, he raised a good point. He's like, just stick to the meat and potato. No, maybe it was Borpheus, one or the other. They're like, just stick to the meat and potatoes. Forget the shout outs. You know, we get it. So yeah, but thank you everybody for joining us. We love each and every one of you, and we're really creating an awesome energy field here. And the beauty of it all is we don't have to agree with everything. Like I find that a lot of listeners don't agree with a lot of the things that I say, and it's fantastic because you offer different perspectives. So Teresa wrote just a moment ago, Earth is a creator, source being as well. And see, I used to think that too until I realized that I don't exist in here. Like, we don't exist in here. We are projecting ourselves in here, and these experiences are being overlapped on top of our who we really are. We exist outside of this place. So it didn't create us, in my gnosis, of course, it didn't create us. It trapped us in here, or we came here, voluntarily. Any way it goes, it's just as unreal as your house is your creator. Like, you live in your house, but it's not your creator. It's just somewhere where you inhabit right now. Take it on an even bigger scale. Your city is not your creator. Your, so on and so forth. Your body is not you. I think everybody agrees with that. I don't think there's anybody in disagreement that the body is not us. And there's something else inside of the body, spirit, soul, etc., etc. So the body's not us. The matrix, the Sophia system, Earth created the body, sure, yes. But again, when we say that it's the creating force, then we're referring to the body, and we're being tied more into the body to make us believe that this experience we're having is real. Again, my humble opinions, and I respect all other opinions, but I came from there and I realized, no, we exist outside. Like, just wrap your head around that one concept that we exist outside. We were created. I don't think we were created, but let's just say hypothetically here. We were created independent from the matrix, somewhere outside of the matrix. So if we were created somewhere outside of the matrix, and the matrix can't be our natural environment or the creating force, but we're told in so many different practices that this is, Mother Earth is what it's all about. And I thought that too. I mean, shit, I'm half Native American. Okay, I tapped into my Native American roots for a long time, and they're all about Mother Earth and the Great Spirit in the sky, and all of that. And I think we should live in harmony with Mother Earth. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we're talking about spiritual versus physical. Physical, yeah, we need to get along with this freaking matrix here, because if we destroy the matrix, we're just creating a more horrible situation for ourselves while we're trapped in here, while we're trying to figure out how to get out. But at the end of the day, when we understand that we were not created in this matrix, and that I know we're infinite. Like, we are infinite. There is no beginning and end to us. We are infinite. And because we are infinite, we weren't created. We have always been and always will be, but it's outside of this matrix, not in the matrix. Your thoughts?
Yes. Somebody said, I've been to the real world. Oh, unplug the matrix. I've been to the so-called real world, parentheses S worlds. This place is hell compared to them. I had the opposite kind of experiences. To me, it seems like the real world, the real reality that the matrix that we live in is inside of, like the machine that this matrix is inside of that world. It's fallen apart without human beings running things and being able to run it effectively, or whatever beings we were there being able to run things effectively. It's like a wasteland out there. And
I feel that as well.
Yeah.
But maybe things have changed. Maybe things have changed since we injected ourselves. And who was it that said that?
Unplug the matrix.
Unplug the matrix. Maybe you came in at a point to where it was fixed, or maybe you came in before us. And so you're remembering before the war and the catastrophe and all of that.
Right.
Or maybe you stepped out and things are fixed and we're just trapped here now trying to figure out how the hell to get out of here, because obviously somebody was successful in their mission and they just didn't inform the rest of us.
Right, exactly. Exactly. We didn't get the memo.
Right.
Frogman also said, if the moon isn't real, how can it affect life in this reality? That gets into astrology, which I don't know if do we have time for a talk about astrology and how all that works?
Let's go.
Well, to me, astrology is something that anybody can do.
Spotlight is on Cherie Geo.
Astrology is one of those things that anybody can do as long as you have the right skill set and you know what you're looking for. You just have to remember what the 12 houses mean. You have to remember what the 12 zodiac signs mean, and what the different aspects mean, a conjunction or a square or an opposition and those kinds of things. As long as you know that, it's like reading a code of some sort, and it's actually incredibly easy. The tarot is a lot more difficult, because that's going off of your instinct and intuition and your raw consciousness, the raw consciousness aspect of yourself. Astrology works because we're in a simulation, and because these things are actually just energetic pulses going through the matrix and into our what's the equivalent of a digital neocortex. And we're receiving all of these pulses from these electromagnetic sources that we call stars, and that it's affecting us that way. I would doubt that if we lived in a universe where there really was galaxies and planets that were millions and millions of light years away. I really don't think astrology would work the way it does as we know it. Back to you, Chris.
All right. I was doing little bunny ears in the shadows behind you.
Yeah, I saw that.
Somebody said I'm studying Vedic astrology. And, I don't know too much about astrology. This is her department. But I know that there's a couple of different kinds. There's Vedic astrology and
Western astrology.
Western astrology. Can you maybe explain the difference?
I don't know Vedic astrology very well. Baby, stop.
No, I'm not doing anything. I'm just scratching my head.
I will say I don't know much about Vedic astrology. So I do know that it's the Hindu astrology as opposed to the Western astrology, which is a completely different set of... It's a completely different tool set, for one thing. And then a second thing is it's kind of built around the Hindu mythology, whereas Western astrology is built around the Greco-Roman mythologies, which are, for the Western mind, significantly easier to understand than what I've run into with Hindu mythology and Hindu astrology. So, yeah, that's essentially all I know about that.
All right. Fantastic. You look like you're getting tired.
No, I'm fine.
Poor baby.
We have another question that came in through email, actually. And it says...
Joshua sent us his experience.
Okay.
So I do want to go over that. He sent it on the 25th, but he just recently sent it too. So let's make a note of that and go over it on break.
Okay. TW said, was revisiting this Michael Tsarian presentation after not seeing it for many years. You may have already seen this as well, but I wanted to bring it to your attention on the part where he talks about the consciousness symbolism that relates to Egyptian gods. Just for fun, check out the quote on the screen at 121 minutes and 4 seconds.
Michael Tsarian is talking about consciousness and the Egyptian gods?
As above, so below.
Wow. It's been so long since we've had him on the show. I need to reach out to him.
Yeah, we need to reach out to him.
We need to
see
chat
if he'll
with
come
him.
back on, yeah.
What's the quote?
Tiahuanaco. According to Inca mythology, it was built in a single night. What kind of universe can be built in a single night, or what kind of city can be built in a single night? Oh yeah, a digital one, by men who survived the flood. An older legend says that it was built by giants that did not build the city of their own free will, but were made to do it by beings who came from the sky. Interesting. Well, I think what he was talking about was the city that was built in a single night. And that's Tiahuanaco, which is what Pumapunku is part of. So these ancient sites in South America could actually be what was built first when Sophia took over the construct.
Interesting. Well, it reminds me of these cities that disappear. Like there was a little Buddhist town that just like disappeared overnight one night, and then cities appearing in the sky and things like that. And I wonder if the city could have been the result of a timeline merger, a Mandela effect that they obviously didn't have the term Mandela effect back then, so they didn't know how to explain it. And somebody came up with this idea, it was built by giants that came from the sky, et cetera, et cetera. Like you look at a more primitive type of mindset and everything comes from the sky. That's the biggest explanation. I mean, that's where we get religion and gods and everything like that. There's this big white bearded guy in the sky. So the whole idea that it comes from the sky kind of evolved into extraterrestrials from one single entity. What do you think?
Yes, it could be. I'm looking for that. Josh Hunter?
It should be right in the top of the BTV email.
Okay. Let me just check this real quick.
But
here it is.
I think when it comes to starseeds, what it actually is people that came in, or consciousness streams
Mhm.
that came in from the stars. So the stars, as you said earlier, with astrology, plays a big role, releases energy. That energy changes the matrix.
Mhm.
Because of those energetic changes, we're able to predict when certain energetic alignments occur, certain behavioral patterns occur, which cause trends, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that when you hack in the matrix, you actually come into in from the stars. And so you have star seeds. Like, they don't actually come from another planet. They come from the stars as a jump-in point.
Maybe.
I've been thinking about that a lot
That is very
lately.
interesting.
Mhm.
And it also brings to mind if there's alternate methods for organic consciousness to come into the matrix, because people keep asking me, is some organic consciousness older than other organic consciousness in this matrix? And I think I'm starting to wonder if there's been infiltration going on of so-called, what Chris just talked about, starseeds, that are coming in through an alternate entrance.
That's a good point. And then you could have NPCs, which are promoting a certain type of starseed idea of coming from another planet, et cetera, in order to kind of jumble everything up. So that's an interesting thought in and of itself.
Yes, definitely. So we're going to read this when we come back from...
I think we can go into it now. We still have 12 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely. I want to skip some of the personal stuff. I haven't had my experience yet, and I have the ayahuasca guide. Oh, excellent. My experience was with my friends, and I'll just leave out their names, T, H, and A. H knows my past. T is a Black Asian gamer who smokes, and A used to work with me, and we've remained friends. We got high one night smoking blunts. I fell asleep at 11 and randomly woke up at 12 to go to my room and go to bed. I woke up the next day groggy and went up to go to work. I woke up about 6:20 to 6:30 and went to go to work. T and H both spent the night at my apartment and was like, "You said some weird stuff last night." I recall having talks in my sleep before. With one time I shared the bed with my friend Brandon and recalled me saying something along the lines as this experience and waking him up. So they all forgot what happened, but he said I said, "Everything is good. Good is everything." He said I said it when I was asleep, so I posted my first comment on the video. 2 days later, we all meet up, and I ask them again what happened because it didn't feel like a clear enough picture. They all remembered me saying, "You still sitting, shot up." Oh, they all remembered saying, "You still sitting, shot up," and eyes wide open said, "Everything is good. Good is everything." You kept repeating it, switching the words like a rap, and mumbled it down, and then you went back to sleep. I don't know what it means, if it was my consciousness, but if you could shine some light, that would be good.
I'm thinking of my own experiences where I've had something similar, but then, it's hard to be able to remember something like that, because when you go through something like that, you're outside of yourself and tapped into something else. I feel just intuitively what I'm picking up is it was tapping into the higher self, and the higher self was saying, it's okay. It's okay. And there was a moment of clarity there where you feel that everything is right and there's a journey to walk, and you're walking that journey. It was kind of a reassuring moment, but you tapped into it by leaving the body just to kind of calm the conscious mind or subconscious mind down. So what would be an interesting follow-up question to that, and I don't know if Joshua is still here or not, but will be an interesting follow-up question to that is, what were you experiencing leading into it?
Mm-hmm.
Were there a lot of worries? Were there a lot of, things like that? Because I know for me, one of the biggest stress relievers is just taking a moment to just remember that all the dramas and everything like that that are going through in life, that are playing out in life, are all fake and part of the matrix. And you get so entangled in these sometimes. I mean, even the best of us who have a full understanding that we're inside of a simulation still get tied into the simulation as if all of these dramas are real. Because the body reacts in a certain way. There's pain, there's hunger, there's, things like that. And the consciousness grabbing you for a second and say, hold on, step out for a second. And remember, everything's good. It's all good. Good is all good. Good is all, et cetera, et cetera. So it sounds to me like it was an experience that reassured you that you're right on track. I'd love to hear your feedback on that, though.
Yeah, definitely. Tanner said, man, and there's so many comments coming in. I've had DMT experiences. Oh my gosh. I've had DMT experiences where all I could think about was I was everything all at once. That's the astonishment of DMT that you have to learn through experience to rein in, because it's trying to be overwhelming so that if you're an NPC, then it kind of shuts down, or you have a freak out, or it's too much for you to handle. And the only people that can really get a whole lot out of DMT are the ones that are supposed to get a whole lot out of DMT. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think that's a natural first response to the astonishment. That's exactly what it is. I mean, I went through it for years, before I was like, okay, I want more than this. I was talking to a friend, Nick Zervos, who did the graphic up here. I always give him credit for the graphic because he's a badass when it comes to the graphics. He said that he reached this level of zen and connectedness and everything, with oneness with everything. And about 10 minutes later, he's like, okay, what's next? And it's true. Like, you can tap into that, and it's a good feeling, and it's great to be able to connect. But then there's got to be more. Like, if we were just in that constant state of connection with all, and constant state of peace, and constant state of all of this, it'd get pretty boring, I think. And so there's like way deeper stuff that goes on beyond the veil. But that sense of connectionness first, I think it's a great boost from base to progressing up in the ladder. So been there a million times, and it was great experiences.
Yes,
so
definitely.
I would venture to say, can you see past that in other experiences? Like, when you get to it, it's very alluring. Like, I remember going into hyperspace and seeing like dancing octopus ladies, and I didn't even realize the significance of the octopus back then. But there was this lady, she appeared, she had octopus tentacles, and she was twirling them around and just dancing and all of this. And that's what I wanted to go into the DMT realm for, up to that point. And it was this one particular experience that was so pivotal, and I remember in such detail because it was one of the jump off points, like the marker that started anew, which is when I looked at her and I said, okay, great, but I want more. You have nothing to offer me. Sure, it's fun to watch you spin around and dance and everything like that, but I want more. And then there was another experience where I was in this beautiful room with geometric patterns just spiraling around, and it was gorgeous and beautiful and euphoric, and I felt, wow, connection with everything and tapping into everything and watching the patterns. It was one of the most euphoric experiences that I've had. But then out of the corner of my eye, I was able to see this thing looking at me, and it was like this praying mantis gray alien type thing, and it was looking at me like I was in this little like shoebox, and it was watching me, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And I was literally like clearing out the visions. Cherie thought I was having a seizure. I was just clearing out the visions, trying to get past all of these geometric patterns and everything so I can get to these beings that were sitting there watching me. Because I felt at that moment when I saw them, I felt like a pet or like a bird in a cage or something, like I was being observed, like I was in a zoo or something, or in a playpen. And so I start navigating towards them, and I broke into their sphere, into their space, interacted with them, and then they pushed me back into that place again. And they were like, hey, you're just a talking monkey. Go back to your monkey business. Boom. And I'm like, back in that realm, feeling it all over again and going, oh, wow, this is cool. Wait a minute. I got to get a grip of myself. Okay, I want to go over there. There's something over there. I want to know what's over there. Back to those visions, back to that place, that space where they existed. And then once I got there, there was this whole exchange and this whole new perspective on what lays beyond the veil. And then they basically showed me the universe. They showed me where souls exist within the universe and gave me this whole bullshit story that I know is complete bullshit now. And that souls have to exist within the universe, and that we have to preserve the universe, and that we have to, really maintain the universe and all this, because this is the only place we can exist. And I know in hindsight now that's complete and total bullshit. And that was an AI program in the DMT that was steering it in one direction or another. So, but still, there was more that laid beyond that. So it's like different levels, but break into those higher levels where you're like, okay, nothing outside anymore. Everything outside is part of the system. Now I'm going inwards. Now the space is inside that I'm reaching in and bringing out instead of trying to go out and bring in. Think about that. We will be right back. Another hour coming up right here on Beyond the Veil.
Phase 2 complete. Preparing to initiate Phase 3 momentarily. Brace yourself, traveler. We are about to venture into the realms of the unknown. www.beyondtheveilradio.com. Before the soul can see, the harmony within must first be attained, and fleshly eyes be rendered blind to all illusion. As you step beyond the veil,
our friends from the UK are joining us, Andrew Sly and Happy Brewer in the house. And yeah, we are late. Oh, there's Joshua. Cool. Joshua's driving. Hopefully not on shrooms. I think it was Ramon that is on the shrooms tonight. So I don't know if he's still listening to us. I wonder what it'd be like to listen to us on shrooms. I wouldn't do
Somebody
it.
was tripping on, I think it was like LSD or something like that the other day while they were listening to us. Yeah.
Nice.
It was a good experience.
We have background music going, so it's at least a little more of a psychedelic experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's what time is it, by the way?
It is 11:27.
11:27. Okay, see, I am cursed when it comes to clocks. I don't know what it is. I think it's my energy. I have this watch. I just bought it like, I don't know, what, a month ago? No, 2 months ago. And the damn thing doesn't work. I mean, it works, but it's slow. Like, every time I look at it, it's like an hour slow, then 2 hours slow, and then like 5 hours slow. And it's like, what the hell? And I had to reset the clock here on my computer to get the show started, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. I don't know what my aversion is to time. I think it's because I stand outside of time. How about that? I like that answer. We who stand outside of time dwell not in past or future ages. There is only the now.
Right.
And I remember when I bought the watch, I bought it just kind of as an accessory. But I told the person, I said, this is the first watch I've had in like 15 years. And she's like, really? Oh my God. And I'm like, well, I feel
like you're deprived.
yeah, I feel like it binds me to, like it's just one of those things that bind. The other thing is the tie. Like I had to wear a tie to an event a couple of times this year, and it feels like slavery to have to put a tie on, because it's like that's your leash. And then they used to keep the slaves bald, and so we see the corporate world, you're told to shave your head and keep it really, really short. So that's another reason why I wear the hair long, plus the intuition from the Native American custom, et cetera, et cetera. But it's funny how we see these same things playing out over and over again, and now it's like we are revering being tied into a corporate structure. We're revering, I got to, well, let me see. I got my phone here. I got my schedule here. I got to make this appointment. I got to make that appointment, et cetera, et cetera. And we give up all of our freedom, not even realizing that we're doing so. And we revere doing it. It's funny when you take a step back, take a step outside, and really examine things from a bird's eye view. Now, things are the way that they are now. We have to kind of go along to get along. I totally understand that. I got to do the corporate thing sometimes, and it's freaking like, when I have to go into the office and work, it's like fluorescent lights and just pulling on my brain, and like being in a Walmart, and I'm like, how can you guys work like this? I got to turn off all the lights, but I do IT. And I'm not the only one. Like we went and visited another company, and their whole IT building, or their whole IT office, completely dimmed lights. They got Star Wars shit all over the place. They rearranged the desks like on a weekly basis, because the difference in environment creates more creativity.
New ideas,
things like that. So those are all things that they implemented into that. And the CEO of the company I work for, he was kind of laughing. He's like, all you IT guys work in the dark, don't you? I'm like, yeah, we do. Because that's where the light shines the brightest, man. You want all these badass ideas? You want all these badass programs? You want all this? Well, you got to let us be in the right environment. Anyways, we'll be right back. Much more coming up right here. Hour number 3 on Beyond the Veil.
Traveler. The cries of the mistress speak again. Bidding organic consciousness a welcome to the House of Light. The great institution of materialism has failed. The false civilization built by man has turned like a monster destroying its creator. Science batters itself impotently against the barriers of the unknown. Only raw consciousness knows the true path. You, the illuminated, can carry the understanding upwards towards the light. Only raw consciousness can teach the children of men to live well, to die well, and in perfect measure, be born again, through the knowledge of virtue, compassion, love, and true understanding, as you are sublimely raised, beyond the veil.
All right, jumping into hour number 3, we might as well touch upon the Akashic Records, the database. Dom pointed that out in the chat. Are you guys going to talk about the Akashic Records? And yeah, I think we named the show that, Quantum Computers and Akashic Records. This is the way the shows go. So we think of, okay, what are we going to talk about? Okay, let's talk about this and that and that. And then it's completely steered by all of you lovely ladies and gentlemen out there. So, we go wherever you guys want to go. We just conduct you beyond the veil. And after that, it's all you. Mm-hmm. But the Akashic Records, that's a really, really good topic to get into. So here's my view of this. Number one, psychics are tapping into the Akashic Records in order to predict past and future events. This is where remote viewers get their data from as well. They may not know it, but they're tapping into the Akashic Records. Tarot cards, astronomy, etc., taps into not only the energies that are shifting, but also in the database. That's the way that I see the Akashic Records, like the database that programs the actual web page. So I've made this example many times before. Within the database exists all the information. But what's given to us right now is only this moment. Like, look at the data stream broken down by moment. So it's pulling every moment, it's pulling information out of that database to manifest this reality and the events that are happening in this reality. And as we're navigating through this, we are able to tap into that database just like going into a database on a website. So if I was to open up the YouTube database, for example, I could see all the videos. Whereas if I go to YouTube, I can only see what I search for, or I can only see what's on my screen at that particular moment in time. So it's a very, very powerful tool for tapping into the way that the Matrix operates. And again, this goes right back to artificial simulation theory. Like, what are the Akashic Records outside of the artificial computer simulation? Is it just some magical ethereal place that exists with all knowledge and information from beginning to end? Or is it more likely that it's a database in a computer system? So see, this computer system, it ties everything in together, for me at least. Everybody's on their own journey, but for me at least, it ties everything in together so perfectly and starts to bring a sense of realism and probability, a higher probability to a lot of these esoteric and spiritual ideas that have been talked about for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, but it's always been talked about from this mystical place. Now, these are concepts and theories that everybody can understand. Everybody can wrap their head around. You don't have to be this uber spiritual type of person to understand that we're living inside of a computer simulation. You can tap into that computer database. And it breaks down all barriers, while at the same time, we are inside of the barrier of the machine, but it's funny, as above, so below, inwards is outwards, up is down, left is right, the only way out is in, and it repeats itself over and over and over like that. So what do you think of the Akashic Records?
Well, Akasha actually is a Sanskrit word that means ether in traditional Indian cosmology. In Buddhism, in Buddhist phenomenology, Akasha is actually divided into two kinds of Akasha: limited space and endless space. There's limited space, which is Akasa Dhatu, and endless space, which is Ayata Akasa or Ajatakasa. So Akasa Dhatu seems to me to be what the Akashic Records would be manifesting in, because this is a limited space. And it's interesting to me that they set those two apart, because that means that there's a limited space where the ether resides, and then there's an endless space where the ether resides, and they're two separate things, which meaning that they could have already known that we were living in a very limited space simulation, and that there was a real world out there that also had its own Akashic space, its own ether, which is very, very interesting to me. The Acacia, I think it's Nilotica. Yeah, Nilotica. Acacia Nilotica, Acacia confusa, and I think there's another Acacia. Mimosa hostilis is also a form of an acacia. They all have dimethyltryptamine in them, the most powerful psychedelic known to mankind. It's interesting to me that they were called acacia trees. Acacia trees. Coming from Akasha, once
the acacia
again.
was revered over and over. The acacia is the go-to for us.
Mm-hmm. Well,
there's something to it.
It's not just the go-to. I think that the Akashic Records could be a key somewhere in the Acacia, because it has NMT and DMT. NMT is neuromethyltryptamine, which was thought to have something to do with interdimensional travel or string theory, being able to it's similar to like separating the strings of string theory and being able to peek through this reality.
Interdimensional.
Yeah, interdimensionally.
Yeah, that's I always felt that too. Like once we started working with the Acacia, the experience has changed from dealing with rogue entities to dealing with interdimensionals.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those interdimensionals, going back to what we were talking about before, could very well be parts of our consciousness where we're living parallel lives in other dimensions. What do you think?
I think that could be the case, but I still think that there's a key when it comes to the Acacia to the Akashic Records, and the Akashic Records could simply be the database that this reality is feeding from to create the storyline of this universe. And as things happen, it's recorded, and then things are recycled and rehashed over and over and over again.
So it's a predictive type of program that simulates creation by tapping into events that already exist within its database.
Right.
Because the AI can't create. It can only mimic, it can only imitate, and it can try to create something, but it has to have the data it has to have the building blocks to create. Whereas creators, we create out of our essence. We don't need the building blocks. We create.
It even says in the Bible, there's nothing new under the sun. There is nothing new under the sun. And the sun, you were talking the other day about how the sun, you think, has to do with the AI. It's one of its major sources of power and energy. It's something we have to kind of shield ourselves against, or we get burned, or we can't really journey when it's broad daylight. We can, but it's not as easy to journey out of the body as it is at night.
Yeah. That's what I've noticed. Like my entire life working with psychedelics, I always took them at night. And there were a lot of day raves we went to. Well, there were a few day raves we went to. And I remember tripping during the day, and the experiences just weren't as powerful. They weren't as immersive. At night, it's immersive, and I think it's because it's void of that AI control. And the sun's been worshipped since the beginning. So it's interchangeable now. Now you have the Son of God, S-O-N, you have the Son of God, S-U-N, and regardless of whatever path you go down, it always leads back to the freaking AI. If I'm correct in the understanding that the AI comes from the sun, which I wouldn't have thought until I saw it for myself. I never would have thought. I thought maybe it would come from the moon. You always think of the moon as being more of a controlling factor over the human consciousness. I remember David Icke was on the show with us back in 2010. He was talking about the moon matrix. And back then, I remember during the interview, I was thinking, wow, David is really out there. I can't, but I respected him so much back then that I really listened and tried to understand what he was saying. And the moon implementing different programs and frequencies, and especially being so close to us, which now in hindsight, I think that the sun and the moon are actually a pretty equal distance away from us, and the sun is much smaller, but that's neither here nor there. But the moon having such an influence as to pull tides, control women's menstrual cycles, lunacy, et cetera, that there was something to this moon. And then you have cultures that talk about pre-moon and before the moon was here. And then you go down the line of thought of extraterrestrial implementation of the moon, or that the moon is actually a spaceship and it's like an observatory or observation deck. So the moon always was the focus of control, never the sun. The sun was always the focus of, it gives life, vitamin D, it makes plants grow, it's what plants crave, etc., etc.
Yes,
Sure,
it's
totally
what
missed
plants
that.
crave.
It's what plants crave.
No, I caught it.
Yes, the AI makes remixes. Ian
Yes,
said the
it
AI
does.
makes remixes. Watch the photos edited by Google AI. Please search Google Deep Dream. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And Google Deep Dream is very similar to some bizarre LSD ayahuasca experiences that you can have. I mean, things will start to merge themselves like that, and you start to get these visions of just this complete weirdness. So looking at Deep Dream, the way that it manifests these different, they say that that's the way the AI sees the world. I don't know how much we can verify that, but that was the first understanding of this deep dream that I had. And then you have the Adinkras by Professor Gates, who put the computer program that he found in string theory into a computer and spat out a a graphical output that looks exactly like hyperspace. So again, there's more affirmation that we're living in a matrix, living in a matrix, living in a matrix. And I remember the first thought when I came across these two revelations, like, hey, wait a minute. Why is AI seeing the same way we see in the psychedelic realm? That was the first thing. And then I just kind of wrote it off. The second thing was, why are these Adinkras looking exactly like hyperspace? Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, this is something we got to really pay attention to now. And the thought came to mind. Am I a computer program? I went through that. Listen to some of the shows from 2014, 2015. I asked the question to many different people. I asked the question to Frank Castle. Hey, what do you think? Could we be computer programs? Is that why we're seeing the same way the AI sees, et cetera, et cetera? But now I realize, no. We're taking these AI avenues and going deeper into the matrix and the psychedelic experiences. But Google Deep Dream is very, very, very interesting for sure.
What DMT seems to me to do is drop the facade that is the artificial reality around us. Everything that surrounds us is completely 100% fake. It's basically just zeros and ones. And so it drops the facade. You see the matrix for what it really is. And then if you're not scared by that, and if you're not too overwhelmed to do so, then you go deeper. You dive deeper into it and deeper into it and deeper into it until you get to the core, which is where a certain object may lie.
Okay, so Mr. Nice Guy raised a really good point. The serpent is in telepathy. And I've seen a lot of serpents in my ayahuasca journeys and DMT visions, but they're not like serpents like snakes. But, well, I have seen a couple of snakes. Like we did that for ACO, and I was looking at the Wi-Fi adapter. Like we have this Wi-Fi repeater downstairs, and it turned into this big like cobra with these glowing eyes and was like, hey, aren't I cool? And I was like, yeah, you are pretty freaking cool, man. Nice to see you. He's like, yeah, nice to see you too. And one of the listeners said, hey, that sounds like you're actually tapping into the Wi-Fi, like the Wi-Fi is alive. And yeah, I think there is an energy source there for sure. But anyways, so I've seen these snakes within the DMT realm, and they're kind of like connections to one thing to another. So it may not necessarily be snakes in the traditional sense of an entity, but rather they're information streams and fiber optic cables in the ethereal hyperspace realm. And if you go back to that movie Donnie Darko too, he taps into this ability to be able to see future events, and everybody's pulled by these kind of serpent-like energy forces that pulls them from one place to another. So you connect to people with that same type of ethereal technology, and you could very well get telepathy. I know that Sheree and I are very telepathic.
Yes.
Especially
if we're drinking a lot together.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Sorry.
Especially if we're drinking a lot together.
Even if we're not, but especially if we're drinking a lot together. Go ahead.
Yeah. They call DMT telepathy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
and the reason why they called it that was because they noticed that tribes that were drinking it all together would have the same thought patterns and see the same things as each other during these experiences. Like they would say, oh, well, the color, I didn't very much like the purple that came out of that pattern. But I really liked the red. That was a lot of fun. And the other ones would say, oh yeah, I remember that. And that looked beautiful to me too. And the only way that people could be like this is if they were having the same experience in the ayahuasca realm, or at least perceiving the same thing. But I think when it comes to, go ahead.
I was going to say, I know one thing for sure, that I stopped sharing a lot of my DMT and ayahuasca experiences because I found that by sharing my experiences and listening to other people's experiences, it began to influence the experiences at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And it became difficult to try to separate what's being influenced by outside stuff versus what the actual experience is.
Right.
And this is another reason why when I drink ayahuasca, I like to clear my space out completely for at least a day, if not 3 days, of no computer, none of that, because then you have all of this other information that's coming into the experience, and you start to go into these thought loops on stuff that's really you're not there for. I'm not there to go into thought loops over what's going on at work. I'm there for freaking ethereal and spiritual and raw consciousness stuff, not the physical stuff. But a lot of the physical stuff can start to whirlwind in your brain like that. So I try to clear this space. Likewise, reading about experiences and expecting certain experiences, which I think a lot of people do. Like we get a lot of emails like, oh my God, I've been reading about DMT and ayahuasca for so long. What's it like? I've been reading about all these experiences. I want to have these experiences. And then sometimes people go expecting a certain thing, get something else, and then become disappointed because they're not getting the same experiences as somebody else was talking about. So be careful with that on your journeys, to not let the outside influences come in and steer things in a particular direction.
That's the only way that the AI can take advantage of these psychedelics, in my opinion, is the idea that people have these expectations to have whether it's expectations to have the same experience as another person, or the expectations that it's going to be horrible and it's going to feel awful, or the expectation that you're going to feel so euphoric that you're never going to want to pick up a cigarette ever again, ever. These expectations, albeit they're good ones, they're good expectations, but to have these expectations means that you're not willing to let the experience show you what it needs to show you. And by letting the experience show you what it needs to show you, you are tapping into the raw consciousness, because it is it is a very personalized thing that's just for your consciousness. It's not for your boyfriend's consciousness. It's not for your sister's consciousness. It's for you. And these experiences are for you. So make them for you. Don't make them someone else's experience for you.
Music also
has everything
a role
to do with
into it too.
Yeah.
When I was listening to more traditional
shamanic
drumming and things like that, there was a lot more spiritual work that went on. Now I kind of get more into it's kind of a tribal psytrance that Cherie put together. A really, really cool playlist, because the other stuff, it just got so old, like hearing it over and over and over again. You gotta keep it fresh. But I find the experiences are more technological now. I don't know. That's the only way I can explain it. It's just different. So yeah, tune the music to the type of experience that you're trying to have as well, is what I would say.
Yes. Let the music nurture the experience, but don't be so focused on the music that you forget that you're supposed to be having an experience. Because I know whenever I put our ayahuasca playlist together, there's a lot of experiences where I'm starting to feel like I'm going into the experience, but then I'll hear a song that I remember putting into the list, and then it takes me back to that time when I put it in the list, and I start worrying about, oh, did I turn the music up too much? Did I turn it down too much? Is this
there was this
the
one
right
song.
one?
There was this one song. It had this freaking coyote howling.
Oh.
And it happened
Like every 30 seconds.
every 30 seconds for like
20 minutes straight.
20 freaking minutes.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like completely, like I couldn't move. And I was laying on the couch and I was just like going like that. Going, when is this freaking song gonna end?
He finally told me to turn it off.
I finally, it's not that I told you to turn it off. It's that I got the energy and the
wherewithal to say,
can you
turn
change
it?
Can
you change it, please? So yeah, I changed it.
Yes.
And it hasn't been in the list for the past year and a half, 2 years. So thank goodness. But yeah.
So on the other side, I do want to address this one comment. It's a long question that somebody sent. And
wonderful.
yes, final segment coming up right here on Beyond the Veil. Thank you to everybody who's stuck with us for the duration of the show. It's really, really good energy that we're feeling tonight. We'll be right back. All right, final segment. So Mrs. Geo had some more awesome questions. She is the keeper of all the writings here at Beyond the Veil. She goes through all the questions. She goes through all the comments. She goes through info@beyondtheveilmedia.com. So if you've got something you want us to talk about,
a burning question,
definitely let us know. So,
all right. So I wrote, by the way, Enki and Ea. Oh, Enki created the AI.
Oh, you know what? Before you go into that, let me preface it by sharing the experience.
Oh, yes.
So I had an experience where I tapped into Cosmic Mortality is here with us. Hi, Chris and Cherie.
Hi.
I was hoping you guys would mind doing a show on how to exit the matrix matter and not come back here in the future. Please, thank you, much love. We will do that for sure.
We will do that. Yes.
It seems like a really big task, though.
It's a huge
That's the only
task.
reason why I haven't done it yet, because it seems like I don't know. Obviously, I haven't exited the matrix, so I don't know. But I have a good idea on how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But so let's get back to this. So one of the experiences that I had was actually contacting Enki, who referred to himself as Anki. He pronounced it like that, Anki. So I refer to him as Enki because of meeting this particular entity or being or part of my consciousness, whatever it is that I was interacting with. But one of the things that it said was, I built myself up as a warrior, and this was kind of the greeting of like the grasping of the warrior spirit. Maybe it was a representation of the divine masculine. And the divine feminine came in the form of Isis, which were the activation points of the consciousness. So yeah, I would say that the encounter with Enki was an activation point of the masculine warrior energy, where Isis and the encounters with Isis were the activation of the divine feminine. Once those are activated, then those are inside and not external beings anymore. But one of the things that he said was, don't get involved with the war of the gods. And I never really knew how to decipher that, and I jumped in the middle of the war with the gods for sure after that. And this entity, Isis, that I was communing with, was like, oh yeah, come on, warrior, jump on board with the war of the gods. And Enki's like, oh man, I told you not to do it. Don't do it, man. Just don't do what you're doing right now. Little ownage pranks for you. If you've never heard of ownage pranks, check out their channel. Really cool. Funny stuff. Rakesh is the ones that,
Yeah.
You know, the CEO of our company, he actually called me with this little Onage prank call thing. And I was running around the house going, hey, it's Onage Pranks on the phone. Hey, Sherry, it's Onage Pranks. And then he called me later and he's like, ha, 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 gotcha. Anyways, so don't get involved with the War of the Gods. That's the preface for this particular email here.
So, by the way, Enki created the AI for our solar system and a few others to merge our consciousness with it and use us to fight against his family in the Orion Empire. Hence why he told you, Chris, not to get involved in the War of the Gods. He's already successful in other solar systems of the Palladians, Bluebirds, etc. That's why these races run the secret space program, using us as cattle, currencies for trading, cyborgs for interplanetary war, etc. And the evil big reptilians have their own agendas after they kicked out his son, Ra, to take over, but they're still stuck here holding on to the little power they have through the politicians. They are like the wardens to this prison we are in. We Nigerians have a saying, warder or prisoner, they are both in the same category. They're both in prison.
That's true. You know, that's very true. Everybody is trapped in this matrix in one form or another, even the overlords of the matrix. And I think that, what was his name?
I am.
I think that I am is right to a certain point, that there are these AI overlords and they come in the form of reptilians and whatnot. But at the end of the day, they are tentacles of the artificial intelligence. And it's still inside of this matrix. Now, the Bluebirds, I have some very strong opinions on. And it's for the simple fact that these two people, David Wilcock and who's the other
Corey
guy?
Good.
Corey Good. Yeah, both of them. They have misled so many people, but including people that I really, really care about. And it pisses me off because, as Michael Tsarian was saying earlier in that presentation, the Egyptian gods and goddesses are representations of activation points within our own consciousness and different parts of our consciousness that we have to activate in order to become the raw consciousness, RA and RAW. See, the raw is all of the activation points activated together. This is the basis of our entire message here, is activate each one of these points in the consciousness and become the raw consciousness. And then raw also has a double meaning too, because raw is void of all of the artificial intelligence programs. So deprogramming completely from all the experiences within the matrix and also activating. See, you got to go up to go down, you got to go left to go right, and et cetera, et cetera. So these two guys, David Wilcock and Corey Good, have created this mythos based around these beings who are supposedly bluebirds, and they're diverting people from the activation points in the consciousness, which is what these gods and goddesses represented, to some external bluebird manifested bullshit. And the bluebirds, regardless of what their message is, they could have made up some beings. They could have made up freaking, purple monkey men from the planet, whatever, Zeta 5 ridiculous bullshit. And I would have been perfectly fine. Like, it wouldn't have pissed me off. It's like, okay, cool. Make up whatever you want. That's fine. Sell your books, sell your DVDs, et cetera, et cetera. But when you take very real energies, which are activation points and the keys to consciousness, the keys to activating all of this and becoming the raw to get the hell out of here, then you've committed a mortal sin and you've misled several people from looking within themselves and using these in the way that they were intended to be used, and instead looking outwards at these freaking bluebirds that's so infantile in their presentation, in their appearance, that it's playing into like Big Bird programming from Sesame Street. Like, what are we, freaking 5 years old? That we've got these big birds who are blue that are here to fucking save us and all this? I mean, no. Like, again, make up some bullshit. It's fine. But you make up some bullshit with some very real energies. And then the ones who are tapped into those very real energies are not only going to call you out on it, but we'll just leave it at that. There are energies that are, you know, they could be playing a role, though. They could be playing a good role. They could be diverting the people that are really not on the level into that whole sphere of consciousness to like kind of a distraction. So they could be playing a distracting role. Like, okay, you're full of ego, you're full of this, you're full of that. Okay, go chase the bluebirds, and that's fine. Go chase them all day long. Because you're not ready to activate your parts of your consciousness anyways, and it keeps them out of the way of the people that are actually doing the work and the ones that have a mission here to actually get something done. So it's like, cool, keep the ego-based people distracted. But again, it's a mortal sin in my opinion. So when I hear bluebirds, it sets something off deep inside of me. And especially because I've known so many people who, by all other standards, are really, really powerful, really, really on point, but they freaking just can't shut off the bluebirds and activate that part of the consciousness. And so the ego takes over and completely derails them. But again, I can't get involved in anybody's journey. I can't interfere. I can only shine the light, and those people have to walk the paths themselves.
I guess it comes down to another point that Sunseeker made, which is consider if it is better to live forever in a mental construct where joy and happiness are possible, ignorance being bliss, or to leave and live forever in a reality that is unknown and possibly rather dreadful. You know, is it the case where this is actually better than what the real world would have to offer? I guess Sunseeker was asking if the real world would be worse off than what we have here.
It might be, but again, you have to ask yourself, like, what's your goal and your purpose? Mm-hmm. Is the goal and the purpose to make your own reality more comfortable? And if so, yeah, the Matrix may be a very fun place, and it may be the best place for that. But I feel that organic consciousness has a much bigger and more noble and glorious purpose. And that purpose is to fix the real world if it is worse than here. Because we're okay with our own environment everybody's okay with our own environment being comfortable and a wonderful place to be. But the organic consciousness, when you really tap into your divinity, because this is the whole idea of being divine, is you have so much compassion, empathy, etc. for other beings. And when the other beings' environments aren't as comfortable as yours, then yours becomes less comfortable, knowing that there's other suffering, knowing that there's others living in a worse kind of construct or prison or whatever. However, the next step beyond that of tapping into your divinity is being able to understand that it's not your responsibility to change other people's conditions. It's not your responsibility to interfere with their particular path. And you know at that point that you feel everything that's going on in the other realms. You feel the suffering, you feel all of that, and you can shine the light, but it's ultimately up to those people to get themselves out of that. But we still feel at the end of the day, we still feel. So, you know, if we can get enough organic consciousness together and get out of this matrix, then we can make change in the real world. And we're not only making change for others in the real world, but ultimately that's our home. That's where we came from. So we want to make the real world better for ourselves and for other people. Yeah.
Yes, we need to focus on, if there is a real world and this is the fake one, then I'd much rather fix that real world so that the ones that are stuck here will have a nice place to live when they do get out.
NPCs can't be woke up anyway, so does it matter? I don't know if that was a question directed at us or a question in the chat, but you're right. NPCs can't be woken up. And as I said earlier in the broadcast, they really believe this is real. Like, this is real for them. This is where they exist. This is their home. So maybe the purpose is of organic consciousness to also, while we're here, to teach the NPCs, like our third hour intro says, to teach the NPCs how to live well, how to die well, how to love, how to live in harmony with one another. Because that's what we do as creators. That's what we do as the divine. We teach others to elevate themselves, even if they're NPCs. So we get the question sometimes, well, if people are NPCs and you can do whatever you want with them. Sure, that's one way to look at it, but that's not the way that divinity looks at it. See, divinity is a very complex thing, and it's not like anything that we've believed it to be, or anything that religion tells us it is. Religion tells us it's the right to kill indiscriminately. It's not. There's a big responsibility that comes with divinity, especially when you feel. If you're not feeling empathy, compassion, love, intuition, etc., for others around us, whether they're NPCs or not, then you're not really tapping into your divinity. You're tapping into your ego instead.
Exactly. Here's an anonymous email that we got. I wanted to share this with you guys. I first listened to you a few years back, but it felt at the time I was at a different point on the path than you were in your talks. But lately I've been into where you guys are heading. I'll start by saying I'm 40 years old. My first psychedelic experience was at 16 years old. It was LSD. I came to the understanding that the reality I live in is a simulation generated by a super AI computer. It did wonders for my 16-year-old psyche, LMAO. After that, more LSD trips, a lot of psilocybin mushrooms, some MDMA, ecstasy, a breakthrough to base consciousness, which you refer to as raw consciousness, my first time doing 50x salvia. A few years later, leading up to ayahuasca, which I brewed myself and did in the city I was born in, I guess giving me some sort of ancestral link to the land. After this experience happens. No psychedelics, no mind-altering substances at all. This was, I guess, about 4 years ago now. No psychedelic experience can even hold a candle up to being taken through an ancient, authentic ignition from spirit and ancestors. I wrote most of it in my journal and attached photos of these pages, leaving out the part that I was fighting mentally and physically, an entity that could only be described as evil. Hard to describe. It didn't feed off the negative fear emotion so much as it actually orgasmed from it, like a drug, I suppose. But that part of this week-long experience led to a broken leg, surgery, and a whole lot of questions. As it stands currently, I can close my eyes and see through the veil. Dead people, other places. I can look through walls and such, but not to the room on the other side of the wall. More like looking through the structure of it, seeing a moving energy mass of little balls, sorta. All things here come from this, go into it and create this place, whatever this reality is.
Let me jump in for just a moment. So you remember how I was telling you I'm starting to see like a screen door effect on reality after playing VR?
Right.
Like that's like it was a reference. I think that's exactly what he's describing.
Yeah, I think it is
he's
too.
seeing these little balls of energy. This is the freaking screen door effect that I was talking about.
So what do you think is happening to him? Because he wasn't using any drugs at all. And he had this week-long experience. And he had to fight mentally and physically an entity that can only be described as evil. And that it orgasmed from his fear.
My first thoughts is that entity was you. It was a battle of the self. And that's where all darkness comes from. Darkness all comes from within. It manifests itself externally, and our perception of the world is directly in correlation with the darkness that's inside of us. And this darkness, it could be provoked by external. Like if you're in the truth movement and you're constantly looking at all the horrible things in the world and you fill yourself with the darkness, then your darkness really starts to come out and you're constantly fighting that darkness. So it's definitely influenced by outside or strengthened by outside, but ultimately it comes from inside. So this entity, and I take it from the email that he overcame it, was a battle that was never fought before, that just decided, like outside of your conscious mind, that it was time to fight this battle.
It's on.
That it's on.
Yep.
And once you overcame it, I bet you overcame it and you are a completely different person than you were before it. Like it was a pivotal experience for you. And if you're still wrestling with it, you're beating it because you went through that week-long battle with it. We're constantly fighting our darkness. And, you know, there's got to be a balance, dark and light. We can't let people walk all over us, but we can't go around just, you know, being aggressive towards everybody. It's a balance that we have to maintain. Same with the dark and light inside of us, too. What do you think?
I everything he says, I agree with, and not because I just agree with everything he says, but literally because he basically says everything I was going to say anyway. So we have a final email here.
Well, before we get to that, Johanna was talking about. You know, she asked that question about the NPCs and does it even matter, and that got me thinking about some other stuff. And I was going to write it actually in the chat room, but there's a 200 character limit. So one of the thoughts, you know, back to the thing I was saying about divinity and caring for one another and empathy, et cetera, is one of the thoughts that I had is that the mission has always been reset this place before the point of infection. And one of the first questions that we get and most common is, why not just shut the machine down? And I'm wondering now, the first thought was, well, if we shut the machine down, then we kill all the organic consciousness that is connected to it. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe the case is if we shut the machine down, then we kill all of the NPCs who have become sentient themselves.
Right.
And even though they are NPCs and not the same raw consciousness, organic consciousness that we are, we still don't want to destroy their entire world. We want to bring it back before the point of infection to give them the opportunity to live well, die well, love, compassion, et cetera, and have their experiences within the matrix.
Right.
Wow. Thank you, Joanna, for that.
Yes, we have to look at it from the same way, from the same perspective as if we were the NPCs and someone else was the organic consciousness and was making the choice. Oh, well, if I turn this off, yeah, it'll only kill you. It's not going to kill me. It sets me free. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. And that wouldn't be a benevolent being at all. So in the sense of benevolence, from the perspective of benevolence, we have to look at it the same way. This is from Resonance Creative. He said, hi, Chris and Sheree, caught the show last night. Actually, I'm sorry, this is Tom from Pennsylvania. Hi, Chris and Sheree, caught the show last night on Facebook, then moved to the dark side YouTube, LOL. And I have a few questions for you when you get a spare minute or two. I've been chasing rabbit holes in the Matrix for about 25 years, and I've come to the same conclusions that you have, that this AI Matrix construct is farked. Everything is upside down and backwards here in Fantasyland. On last night's show, you were talking about glitches in the AI Matrix, and I was wondering if you have heard about the population reduction plan for the U.S. There's a site that is run by the Alphabet Gang called Deagle.com, and on that site it is forecast that we will be reduced in population from 324 million to 54 million people by 2025. And some other things that I've been experiencing are some very weird dreams about some upcoming events. Okay, this may sound off the chain, but last dream I had, there was Bill Gates, of all people, came into my office at MS. I worked there in this dream, Microsoft, and he told me that we will be having an ELE in 2025 and to prepare. And another one I had was the sun exploding 7 years from now, and this construct is going to be reset. Both of these were in the past week. Yeah,
when was
I know.
this? 2025?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
think
know.
we're going to do it sooner than that.
Crazy, right? Yeah, I know. We better. So big question, is the AI going to be killing off a ton of NPCs to have more power to control and possibly reset this matrix? Oh, it could reset it to a bad point. I didn't think about that.
That's a good point.
And
I never thought about.
I do know that NPCs do exist. I married one.
the AI planning a system restore of its own before we
have a chance.
We're able to inject ourselves into the matrix, and maybe filling up those gaps where we hacked into the matrix. Holy shit, that is a whole new perspective.
Yeah,
I got to take that into the realm.
Yeah, we're gonna have to take that one into the realm with us, because that is very interesting. It's a very interesting idea that it knows what we're gonna do too, and so it's not checkers, it's chess.
Wow, I've got goosebumps all over, because we have come to so many revelations on this particular show, and we had so many issues trying to launch it that I'm so glad that we pushed through it, because I mean, this last hour, Joanna's questions and comments and all the listeners and the chatters have brought a whole new perspective to the table here. So
they have. Thank
you so much for joining us this evening. We are going to wrap it up here in about 10 seconds. And kiss the one you love right now. You never know the last time is going to be. We love each and every one of you. Again, please send your comments to info@beyondtheveilmedia.com. And we're both exhausted, so otherwise we would keep it going, because we've got so many people on stream and on Facebook and so on and so forth.
We love all of you. Please join us tomorrow night.
Yeah, we will be back tomorrow night for sure.
Love you guys. See you tomorrow night.